Yo, what's up guys? So today we are gonna see, what if Naruto switches his opponents with Shikamaru during the preliminary round before the third stage, part 6. Hope you'll enjoy this video, so before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, Chilord, link is in the description, and also subscribe to my channel, and like this video. Let's begin the video. Sweat glistened down Naruto's face, as he glared at where a smirking Jiraiya was standing in front of him, arms crossed about his chest. Still gotta be faster about it, Jiraiya said simply. If you can't do it fast enough to catch your opponent off guard, and fast enough to keep the heat from getting to you, it's not going to be that useful in a fight. I'm getting better, Naruto growled back, as he glared at Jiraiya. I'd like to see you do something like this. I'm not that crazy, and I don't have that little healing factor of yours to keep from cooking my brains, he responded without skipping a beat, and smirked lightly. Then why are you having me do this? Naruto demanded with a growl, as he looked up at him with sweat-stained eyes. Because you are that kind of crazy, Jiraiya said simply. And this kind of crazy works for you. It just gets so damned hot. Naruto whined softly, as he fell back, staring up at the sky, as the light touch of a cool breeze ran over his skin. You can worry about confining the exothermic properties into the focal point after you've managed to get the technique working, Jiraiya said with a deadpan. Huh? Naruto blinked several times, as he stared back up at Jiraiya. Right, idiot, I forgot. He rubbed his face slowly, and shook his head with a sigh. Hey, don't worry, I'll try to remember to not use big words around you. Jiraiya waved his hand, and shrugged a bit. I don't really have the patience to improve that shitty vocabulary of yours. Bastard, Naruto said with a hiss, as he closed his eyes, and just sank back into the cool earth for a few more moments before slowly pushing himself back up to his feet. Again. Eesh, already? Youth, so quick to recover, Jiraiya said before his lips drew into a wicked grin. Now if only you used it on those girls of yours, I'm sure that they would appreciate it. Especially your little blonde boar of love. Boar of love? Naruto repeated, staring at him with a sudden look of incredulity. Seriously, you're going with a boar of love? Oh, shut up, like you could do any better. Her name's enough for Kami's sake, Jiraiya protested. That's not exactly a name for the epics of romance. I don't even want to think about what Inoichi was thinking of naming her that. I still don't want to even think about the fact that you want to inflict her on me, Naruto muttered sourly. And I still don't see why you're complaining. She's spirited, she likes you, she's going to be one hell of a looker. She's not afraid of actually getting into a fight. Jiraiya shrugged his shoulders. And she likes you. She likes Sasuke, Naruto stated stubbornly. All of them do. And she'll just try to make me act like Sasuke. I'm not Sasuke. I want to be recognized as Naruto Uzumaki. Not someone who tries to be Sasuke Uchiha. Idiot, Jiraiya muttered sourly. If she didn't like you, she wouldn't like you. She wants me to be more like Sasuke. Naruto growled back stubbornly at the man. She only thinks she wants you to be more like Sasuke. What she really wants is for you to be you. Jiraiya nodded with a sage nod of his head. That completely doesn't make sense, Naruto said with a confused stare. My poor little student, let the master educate you in the ways of the female mind. Jiraiya paused dramatically, before glancing carefully to his left, then his right, before leaning in to whisper in Naruto's ear. It never, ever makes sense. But Naruto started to protest, as he stared up at Jiraiya. Never, Jiraiya repeated firmly, as he crossed his arms about his chest. Why should I believe anything you say? Naruto frowned slightly, as he crossed his own arms about his chest, and glared back at Jiraiya. You're just a dirty old pervert. I already told you, I am no mere pervert. I am the super pervert, Jiraiya, Naruto said in complete deadpan. You know, not even I'm dumb enough to yell that like it's a good thing. Humph. I know more about women than you do, brat. Jiraiya grunted sourly, as he glared back at the boy. You just said that you didn't know anything. I said the female mind didn't make sense, not that I didn't know anything, Jiraiya said with a sage nod of his head. For while it does indeed not make any sense, there are certain consistencies in that lack of sense. Naruto looked back at him in silence for a moment. Jiraiya opened his mouth to say something before noting that Naruto's gaze wasn't quite on him. He vanished in a puff of smoke, just before Sunade's fist passed through the spot his head had been a moment before. Ugh, bastard, she said with a grunt, as she straightened up, and then glared down at Naruto with narrowed eyes, as she started to crack her knuckles. Now I'm going to hope you're not so much of a brat that you actually believe that old pervert. He's an old pervert, he said simply, as he looked back at Sunade in confusion. Why would I listen to anything he has to say about women? Hey! Jiraiya's voice called out from a nearby tree. Sunade vanished for a moment, and suddenly the tree split in half, as a log fell to the ground from one of the branches. As she pulled her fist back from the broken trunk, she slowly scanned the area. When she apparently found no further sign of Jiraiya, she scowled and walked back over to Naruto. I suggest you stick with that thought. And never, ever forget it, Sunade muttered darkly, as she continued to send a general glare around her. That kinda was the idea. Naruto paused a moment, before groaning softly, as he fell back, and dropped onto his ass. Now I have to wait for him to get around to getting back here. Slowly Sunade looked at the scorched area around them, before palming her face with an audible groan. You're not seriously trying to make that ridiculous idea work. Hey, it works. Naruto huffed in irritation. I just need to do it faster. Right, she said with a roll of her eyes. I'm sure. Wordlessly he brought up a completed, swirling in one hand, as he glared back at her in challenge. I already got this down. I got my other skills down. You think I won't get this one? Luck is only going to get you so far, kid, Sunade said simply before she suddenly changed the topic. So, don't you have enough girl troubles with your 2 spoils? You've got another girl you're chasing after too? I'm not chasing after her. Naruto turned away, grunting softly. She's chasing after me. Just so she can try to make me act like a bastard. The bastard? Her lips twitched slightly at that, and for a moment, a brief flash of nostalgia rose up, as she remembered another spiky-haired brat describing someone in that tone. Sasuke, Naruto said with a nod. My teammate. Rookie of the year, stuck-up bastard. Which, as I recall, would probably have made you the year's dead last, Sunade said reasonably even, as she smirked at the boy. Naruto tensed at the words, and glared back at Sunade. Yeah, so? You think I care about something as stupid as that? And you really think it's possible for a dead last to become Hokage? Sunade smirked at Naruto, and shook her head. Yes, he said simply, causing her to blink, as he leaned back, and stared up at the clouds. She frowned slightly, and glared slightly back at the boy. Then you need to wake up, and start living in the real world. No one's going to follow a dead last. You think that's going to stop me? You think that's going to scare me away? Naruto didn't even bother looking at her, as he stared up at the sky. All you people are just broken records repeating the same thing over and over again. You're the ones that need to start living in the real world. Excuse me? Sunade's eyes flashed in anger, as her fist clenched back. You heard me, he said, as he sat up, and twisted in her direction. I'm going to follow my dream, no matter what. Even if I have to claw and scrape my way to the top, I'm going to do it. Better men than you have died trying. The pain in her voice had bled into venom, as she glared back at Naruto. And you think some punk like you will triumph where they failed? I don't go back on my word, he said simply, glaring back at Sunade. I said I would be Hokage. I will be. I will protect the people of Konoha. I will make them acknowledge me. That is my dream, and I will make it happen. Sunade unconsciously gripped at the pendant hanging from her chest, and shook her head, scowling at him. People like you always talk so big about their dreams. What happens when you die trying? Do you even think about the people you leave behind? Naruto paused for a moment, confusion written on his face. Huh, when you die on that stupid little quest of yours, not only taking yourself, but those girls of yours too. Have you ever stopped to think about the people you'll leave behind? The people that care about you? Have you? Sunade's fingers clenched tighter onto the pendant in her hand. Do you think about how they feel when you die failing to live up to your dreams? I won't die like that, Naruto said angrily, as he glared back at Sunade. I won't do that to King-chan or Sunshine. He paused a moment before his lips pressed tightly together into a thin, hard line. But even if I did? Dying, fighting to reach your dream? Refusing to give up? They might be sad, sure. But if they knew me, if they knew my dream, they'd know that I died how I lived, refusing to go back on my dreams. So, you just want them to suffer through it? Stupid typical idiocy. Sunade spat, as she refused to look back at him. Naruto looked at her for a moment before he scowled again. I'm not the one who's not listening. It's my dream. It's my reason for living, my goal, my purpose. Friends, people who care about me if they want to deny me who I am, they never really cared about me. He took a breath, and suddenly, he wasn't looking at her, as he stared into the distance. All my life, I wanted recognition, for people to see me. When they finally did, that's not enough for me. I want to protect them. I want to protect them all. So my goal is still the same. I will be the Hokage. I will be the strongest. I will be the awesomest. I will be me. And if people see me, know me like me, they will have to accept that me being me means I have to follow my dream. Otherwise they don't want me to be me. And if they don't want me to be me, how can they care about me? He frowned at his words before scratching the back of his head, and shrugging. I don't know, but doesn't caring about someone mean you care about who they are? If you try to change who they are, aren't you trying to change them into someone that you don't care about? Naruto shook his head for a moment, and turned away from the staring Sunade. Anyway, I need to get back to my training. Later, Granny. It took Sunade several seconds to process his last line before her eye began to twitch violently. Who the hell do you think you're calling old? It was the end of the week Orochimaru had given her to come up with her decision, as Sunade stared down at the half-filled cup of sake, and let the flickering light of the moon reflect across its surface. Tomorrow she will meet with her teammate. Tomorrow would require her to answer Sunade-sama, and of course, there was Shizen. I don't want to hear it, she said gruffly, as she continued to stare down into the sake. You've made up your mind then? Shizen sounded resigned more than anything before simply bowing to Sunade. Very well, that's all? Sunade asked simply, as she raised a brow, and brought the cup of sake to her lips. I expected something more. I miss home, Shizen said simply, head still bowed. I have followed you faithfully for most of my life, Sunade-sama, but I am still a ninja of Konoha. I humbly request to be released from your service. Sunade's flinch was only a tightening of her fingers on her cup, as she kept her features schooled to neutrality. And if I say no, then I will continue to follow you, as I have all these years, Sunade-sama, Shizen said in a completely neutral tone. Ask me again tomorrow night, Sunade responded simply before she raised her cup to her lips, and drained its contents. I see, Shizen slowly nodded her head, before bowing again. Very well, Sunade-sama. With that she wordlessly stood, and backed out of the door, leaving Sunade alone again to stare up into the night sky, searching for answers she knew she'd never find in the glittering heavens. It was wonderfully warm in her bed, Shizen noted with a heavy veil of contented drowsiness fogging over her mind. There was a delightful security she only rarely indulged herself in, buried down in those sheets. Around her the world simply didn't exist for a wonderful moment that stretched on to eternity. Shizen-chan, where's Sunade hiding? And then Jiraiya's voice just had to go, and ruin it. Then his words filtered through her mind. Wait, Sunade hiding? What? Immediately Shizen sat up, before feeling a wave of vertigo washing over her senses. Blonde woman, about this tall, likes to pretend she's half her age, with a rack that makes a man want to fall to his knees, and thank the kami for the glory of creation? Jiraiya waved his hand at roughly Sunade's height before a disturbing grin curled over his lips. She's not here? It was hard to think. Her head was foggy, clouded. Not like how she was normally when she woke up. It was like she was. Her eyes immediately widened, as she attempted to stand up before collapsing back into her bed. Oh no, Shizen-chan. Quickly he moved, catching her just before she could fully crumple. What's wrong? Sunade-sama. She went to meet him, all on her own, she said in almost a whisper, before she frowned. It was difficult to string her thoughts together. She had to force her mind to focus, to ignore the way the drugs scattered her thoughts. She must have drugged me. Him? Jiraiya's voice suddenly went hard. Shizen, are you talking about Orochimaru? She blinked owlishly up at him before opening her mouth, then shutting it without a word, and shrugging helplessly at him. Wonderful. Jiraiya's face was caught in his palm before he looked back at Shizen. Where are they? Again she shrugged helplessly, staring almost owlishly back at him, as she shifted nervously in her blankets. It was really hard to think. Did she even know where Sunade had planned to meet her renegade teammate? Of course, Jiraiya said, as he groaned softly, and shook his head. Well, it's not like I don't have enough time Sunade hunting, as is. I'll come. Shizen managed out, her words thick in her too dry mouth, as she started to push her way out of her oh-so-comfortable sheets before she realized the air felt particularly cool to her skin. Why, Shizen-chan, I never knew you preferred to sleep in the nude. Tell me, is it because you like the way the silk sheets feel against your bare skin? Jiraiya's expression had turned downright lecherous, as he grinned down at her. What? Shizen blinked then blinked again, her eyes owlishly wide, as she looked down from her completely bare chest, to Jiraiya, and back, before her brow furrowed. I don't, do I? Well, you certainly have nothing to be ashamed of. Jiraiya agreed quickly, as he nodded his head, and stared. Wait, Sunade-sama. We have to meet with him. It's not safe. She frowned again. Something was wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. She was rather cold though. As she pulled herself back into her sheets, Jiraiya paused, almost frowning in disappointment, before managing to compose himself. Right, Sunade Orochimaru. I've got to go make sure she doesn't do anything too stupid. Sunade-sama. And him. Shizen blinked before quickly trying to stand up again, almost leaping out her sheets. We have to save her? And before she could fully stand up, she swayed, and faltered, before collapsing, naked back onto her sheets. Oh, you're an evil, devious woman, Princess Jiraiya muttered mournfully, as he looked at Shizen for one more moment before almost whimpering, as he tore his eyes away from sight, and started to move towards the door. Evil, evil I say. 3 figures stood before the ruins of what had been a castle only a week earlier. Orochimaru smirked coldly towards Sunade. Next to him his assistant, Kabuto, watched Sunade with a more wary expression behind his glasses. So, come to a decision, Sunade-chan? There was nothing but confidence in his smirk, as he stood there, his golden eyes glittering wickedly. Let's just get this over with, she said irritably, as she refused to quite look at him. Kukuku, the cold chuckle softly left his lips, as he slowly lifted up his hands, and looked around. No Shizen-chan? My, I didn't expect you to be here all alone. Shizen asked to be released from my service last night, Sunade said, her teeth gritted softly. Oh ho? Such a shame, Orochimaru said, as he lifted up his bandaged arms. I would think she would have realized you were making the right choice. Sunade turned a harder glare at Orochimaru before her hands lifted up towards his, beginning to glow a pulsing green. It was then that Kabuto suddenly imposed himself between Sunade and Orochimaru, pushing his master behind him, as his own hands began to glow a pulsing green. I'm afraid she's deceiving you, Orochimaru-sama, Kabuto said quickly, as his master's grin faded into a frown of irritation. Her killing intent. Ah, Kabuto-kun, so overprotective, the grin returned full force, as he chuckled again. Of course she wants to kill me. Her dear little apprentice has gone, and abandoned her. Now all she has left is the promise of her dear loved ones to be returned to her. You have a really annoying brat there, Sunade growled out, as she glared back at Orochimaru. As I said, he's so very overprotective, Orochimaru chuckled softly, as his eyes glittered. Besides, we all know what your little weakness is here, Sunade-chan. And something so easy to bring out. Let's just get on with this, you bastard. Sunade hissed out with a glare. Of course, we wouldn't want to keep Dan and Nawaki-kun waiting, would we? Orochimaru smirked softly, as he held up his hands again, her hands glowing green once more. Sunade took hold of Orochimaru's hands. She then raised her head, and looked up into his eyes. They'll have to wait a while longer. Orochimaru's eyes widened before he let out a scream of pain, as the bones in his hands were completely crushed inside his flesh. Then he was flying through the air courtesy of a powerful kick from Sunade. His entire body exploded in pain an instant later, as he crashed through the hard stone wall that had surrounded the castle. Sunade turned towards Kabuto before freezing. A splash of crimson blood flicked into her face, as Kabuto held up a bloody kunai, with his free hand dripping blood. I have to congratulate you, Sunade-sama. It must have taken an exceptional amount of control to destroy Orochimaru-sama's bones like that, and not have broken the skin, Kabuto said with a patronizing smile. But you really shouldn't have underestimated me. Sunade said nothing, only shivering in response, as she stared back at the dripping blood splashing onto the ground. Her whole body was frozen, refusing to move. All she could see was flash after flash of Dan's dying body, his blood covering her hands. Ah well, one less problem to worry about, Kabuto said reflectively, as he held up his kunai. If only all problems could be solved this easily. Leave her alone, you basta. Naruto's voice cut in, as his kunai landed where Kabuto had been only moments earlier. You, Naruto-kun. This is a surprise, Kabuto said with a sigh of annoyance before frowning lightly. I shouldn't be, but that does seem to be your specialty. But what? Naruto's mouth hung open, as Kabuto sent his kunai rocketing towards him at speeds faster than his body could fully react to. It split around him nearly a foot from his face. You just tried to kill me, Naruto stated, before his eyes narrowed, and his jaw clenched. You just tried to kill me, and I am sorry about that, Naruto-kun, but I'm afraid I really do need to kill Sunade-sama here. She did just try to kill Orochimaru-sama, Kabuto said apologetically with a cold smile back at Naruto. So I'm terribly sorry, but could you please lay down and die now? No, he practically roared out, as he rocketed towards Kabuto. I'm sorry, I'll have to insist. Kabuto simply twisted out of the way of Naruto, easily avoiding the grinding edge of air cutting away in front of him, and dodging the blades of wind jetting past his clawed fingers with apparent ease. As he twisted out of the way of Naruto's angry charge, his glowing green hand struck, slapping against Naruto's shoulder, almost barely making contact before pulling back with a smirk. Naruto's arm immediately went limp, falling uselessly at his side, as he bit back a scream of agony at the sudden eruption of pain. Twisting about, he growled softly, and skidded to a stop, his fingers and claws gouging into the earth from his good arm. As you can see, Naruto-kun, one doesn't need wind to cut, Kabuto said with a chuckle, as he pushed his glasses up his nose. A good medic, well? Naruto's response was a deepening of his growl, as suddenly the air grew saturated with a thick, boiling rage. As crimson bled into his eyes, a coat of matching chakra flowed out over his body, pulsing, bubbling above his skin. Kabuto's smirk dimmed slightly, as he watched the slight transformation Naruto endured, before suddenly the limp arm at his side lifted, and his fingers flexed. "So, you've learned to harness a bit of the Kyuubi's power after all, Naruto-kun?" "I'm impressed." Kabuto let himself smile again, as he shifted, and glanced around. "And you put yourself between me and Tsunade-sama. You might actually have what it takes to be a shinobi." "A pity." "Shut up," Naruto said simply, before his fingers moved into a familiar sign, and suddenly the area was flooded with clones. "Ah yes, the quantity over quality approach. I expected better from you, Naruto-kun." Kabuto sked lightly before his glowing hand struck a rushing Naruto in the crotch, before he jabbed another Naruto in the throat, and crushed a third's foot beneath his heel. "Quality first, Naruto-kun. Quality first." Naruto stared at him, mouth opened in shock at the speed and efficiency that Kabuto displayed, completely contrary to the teen he'd encountered in the exams. "I thought it was fairly obvious I was fooling you before, Naruto-kun." "I am a ninja after all," Kabuto said with a thick condescension. "Now I'm afraid I've wasted enough time on this. Goodbye, Naruto-kun." And with that he tore through the clones without pausing for more than a moment. He kept himself moving in tight efficiency, every step carefully measured just beyond the reach of blades and blows. He wasted as little energy as possible, evading most of the clones instead of dispersing them, treating them as if they weren't even worth his time. Then, he was suddenly almost on him. He twisted at the last moment, avoiding the cutting edge reaping towards him by the barest of distances before lashing out with his hands once more. A nearby clone pulled Naruto out of the way, catching the strike in his own back, and exploding in a cloud of smoke. As Naruto twisted about, claws raked out, leaving slashes of red across Kabuto's chest. Kabuto simply took a step back and, as one hand glowed over his wounds, the other struck down 3 more clones in quick, snapping thrusts. "I had forgotten how lucky you could be, Naruto-kun. I suppose it's time to stop playing then." He moved even faster, as he suddenly struck inside of Naruto's guard, his hands hitting once on each of his arms, once on each of his legs. When he finished, Naruto dropped onto the ground with a choking scream of pain. He glared back up at Kabuto, his eyes still an almost glowing, bloody red, as he wordlessly tried to struggle back to his feet. "Yes, I'm sure that your little bijou-induced regeneration can heal you back up in no time, almost, as well as I can heal myself, Naruto-kun," Kabuto said almost indulgently before he smiled coldly back at him. "Which is why I don't plan on giving you a chance to recover." "Goodbye, Naruto-kun," he said simply, as he moved swiftly around the forming blade of air, and struck towards Naruto's chest. Only another crimson-cloaked form barreled into the way, knocking them both out of the way, and tumbling around until they came to rest at the feet of the still-frozen Sunade. When they stopped, Naruto found himself on his back staring up at his savior. Weakly, Kin smiled back down at him. "I'm sorry I was so afraid, Naruto-sama," she said in a voice that was soft, too soft, before her body convulsed, and blood began to leak past her lips. Kabuto actually frowned at that, before sighing softly, and shrugging his shoulders, as he lifted his hands up almost helplessly. "Well, Naruto-kun, you certainly seem full of surprises. Another somehow going, and throwing their life away for you? Quite amazing. Well, at least I don't have to deal with both of you. Kin-chan?" Naruto stared up at the girl, feeling the way she just collapsed atop him, as he weakly managed to pull his arms up, to hold her gently even, as he could feel the way her body fell still, and silent. "No, it was supposed to be your heart I did that to, but I suppose I really do keep underestimating that luck of yours, Naruto-kun," Kabuto said with an exaggerated sigh, and a shake of his head. "And, as I really do need to get Orochimaru-sama out of here, I'll share something I learned just in case it came to this." No, Naruto forced his body to sit up, cradling Kin's body in his arms. "Kin-chan." Sunade watched, frozen, as the present warred with the past in front of her, everything slowing to a crawl, as memories slipped back and forth with reality. She could see Dan and Nawaki, she could see Naruto and Kin, she could see herself and her grandfather, she could see her sensei and her uncle, she could see Naruto's parents, all in a broken series of images, flashing together. Words vaguely reached her ears, from the blonde boy, and from the smirking man. Then words led into actions, as his hands moved through a series of signs, and a sudden rolling line of fire barreled down onto them. This wasn't right. She was sitting by, watching it happen all over again. This wasn't right, and somehow she could feel her body start to move, start to stand up, start to move towards the children. Only, she already could see she was moving too slow to make it in time. Then fire exploded around them, turning into an inferno that blocked out in a rush of hungering, greedy flames. Reflexively she knew she wouldn't be able to pull off a move to stop it in time. But still she had to try. Then that voice spoke up. "No. It didn't speak. Instead, it screamed in defiance one single word. No, it hadn't been a completely simple thing for Kabuto to learn the fire technique, in spite of his many talents. His affinities simply didn't match up. Still, that merely meant it was more difficult, not impossible. For all his failings, the third Hokage had proven that a single person could master all 5 of the elements if they had the intelligence and dedication. Naruto's very public demonstration of his newfound skill left its nature rather simple to deduce. At least, it had been once he used the wind claw attack to destroy the girl's fan. It had been bold, it had been powerful, and it had made a statement of how he had completely and utterly dominated the match and his opponent. And it had foolishly demonstrated the glaring weakness of his defense for anyone who cared to pay attention. Just as predicted, the instant the relatively weak line of fire had hit only a few feet in front of the boy, it had suddenly exploded into an inferno. Kabuto didn't even have a chance for his smirk to falter when the exploding mass of flames heralding the death of the young suddenly vanished, and a thin line of burnt earth raced towards him. It moved, as faster than he imagined it would. Even as he shifted to the side, moving out of the way, he knew he wouldn't be fast enough. Immediately he pumped chakra into his arm, strengthening it just where he knew the blade of wind would hit it. It was instinctive, reflexive, and in the end, utterly futile. The blade cut through his flesh without even a moment's hesitation. As his arm fell, severed, and useless, the smell of greasy, burnt flesh filled the air. Instead of a dripping stream of blood, the heat in the air had completely cauterized the wound. It didn't make it hurt any less, as he bit back a scream, and turned his eyes into a twisted glare of rage, as he looked back at the boy. Wisps of burning, boiling chakra had wrapped about him again, as he cradled the girl in his arms. Bloody, hateful eyes glared back at him, with white, gleaming teeth glinted with fang points. For a moment, Kabuto faltered, as he took in the utterly alien look on the defiant braggart he'd met during the exams before he couldn't help but let his snarl cool into a cold smirk of satisfaction. Well, going to preach to me now, Naruto-kun? There was more bravado in his voice than he actually felt. The boy's attack had actually handicapped him, rather handedly, and that surge of demonic chakra was sure to bring Jiraiya running. He would have to move quickly if he was going to kill Sunade while she was still. Give her to me, brat. Helpless? Sunade reached out, and gently took the girl out of the boy's hands, and laid a glowing green hand on her chest. Sunade, still splattered in blood, holding the girl with blood leaking out of her mouth. She didn't show even the slightest moment of hesitance or fear. Go ahead, kid. Show him what you've got, she said, not even bothering to look at him, as the demonic chakra extended around him, suddenly forming into ears and a tail. Kabuto-kun, I'm afraid we've worn out our welcome. The silky voice was still flowing, oozing with confidence, as Orochimaru rose out of the mud behind him, looking no worse for wear from Tsunade's devastating attack. And it looks like little Naruto-kun is much more than you reported to me previously. He glanced towards Kin, lying beneath Tsunade's hands, before suddenly his eyes lit up in recognition. And how interesting. You know the other, Orochimaru-sama? Kabuto asked carefully, before the surge of demonic, killing intent rose even further. Little Kinchan isn't just another broken, worthless tool to be cast aside, Orochimaru said dismissively before both he and Kabuto leapt back, as Naruto slammed into the spot, almost cratering the earth with the force of his blow. At least, we should deal with this little pest before he becomes any more of a problem, he said with a TSK, before suddenly his sword erupted from his throat. Naruto roared back in challenge, only to swiftly find his face slammed into the earth beneath Orochimaru's heel. You didn't think it would truly be that simple, did you, Naruto-kun? Orochimaru chuckled softly, as his sword erupted fully from his throat. Didn't you learn anything from that little exhibition in the forest? And suddenly he leapt back, pushing Naruto's face deeper into the earth, and landing a short distance away. Eyes narrowed, he glanced down at where his foot was smoking, shoe ruined completely, and flesh starting to turn red. Shaking his head, he gave one last, cold smirk towards the boy still embedded in the ground, and then brought his head, and the blade with it, down towards his body. The air suddenly broke into the high-pitched whine of grinding metal, as the swirling pulse of it struck the sword, propelling it, and the body holding it, away from the chakra-infused body. Just in time to save the day, the gallant Jiraiya has arrived, Jiraiya declared loudly, as he struck a classic kabuki pose over the prone Naruto's body, dispersing in his hand. Orochimaru actually glared at Jiraiya, as his sword slowly vanished back down his throat. You know I like that sword, you fool. Sorry, but I can't let you hurt one of my students, Jiraiya said seriously, as he glared back at Orochimaru. And since you just tried to kill them, I'm afraid I'm going to have to kill you. You? Kill me? Orochimaru barked off a laugh, and smirked back at Jiraiya. I see all that research of yours has finally rotted what you had left of your mind. Stand down, Jiraiya. The voice was quiet steel, as suddenly Sunade was walking towards them, Kin still gently cradled in her arms. Jiraiya froze for a moment, as he stared at the girl in Sunade's arms. Is she? She'll be fine, Sunade said simply, as she pushed the girl into his arms, rather forcefully, before leveling her eyes onto Orochimaru. Neither Kabuto or Orochimaru particularly felt like smiling at that point. After he killed the last Hokage, if anyone's going to kill him, it's going to be the next one, Sunade stated simply, as she cracked her knuckles. Orochimaru-sama? Perhaps we should? Kabuto asked wanly, as he glanced from the two rather upset Konoha Sannin back to the one he served. Orochimaru glared at his former teammates for a moment before nodding his head, reluctantly. Yes, I suppose we should. With that said, both figures seemed to dissolve down into the earth. I don't think so. Not that easily. Sunade growled softly before slamming her fist into the ground. Instantly, the earth fractured, and almost exploded between her and where the pair were vanishing. A moment later there were suddenly snakes exploding off in every direction. A wave of white pins followed them, causing them to vanish in puffs of smoke. When that smoke finally dispersed, they found nothing but shattered earth remaining, along with Kabuto's dead, discarded arm. Are we going after him? Jiraiya asked, as he glanced back at Sunade who was frowning slightly at the broken earth. No. Sunade slowly shook his head. We don't have a sensor to follow him, and he threw up enough false trails that we'd spend hours chasing them down. So we're just going to let him go. Naruto pushed himself up out of the dirt, the wisps of Kyuubi chakra slowly dispersing, as he looked up at Sunade. After what he did, kid, what he did here was just a fraction of what he's done before, Sunade said simply, as she shook her head, and stared back at the slight blood smear on her hand. He will be stopped. Just not today. But Naruto glanced over at Kin, still in Jiraiya's arms, then looked back towards the shattered earth Orochimaru, and Kabuto had vanished from. Another day, kid. Another day. Sunade slowly glanced around before looking back at Jiraiya. No, you wanted me to bring her, naked, and drugged out of her mind, out in public? Jiraiya asked with an incredulous stare at Sunade. Well, I did use toad secretions. I thought you might be familiar enough with the effects to think of something. Sunade waved her hand vaguely. Though I'm impressed you made it here so quickly. I figured I had at least 10 more minutes before you managed to pry yourself free. Jiraiya grunted back at her before he walked over, and calmly pushed Ken into Naruto's arms. Just take your little pet back to the hotel, kid. Looks like we're heading back to Konoha pretty soon. Back home? Naruto perked up, as he glanced back at Sunade with wide eyes before frowning a bit. But I thought? I said I was gonna be the Hokage, didn't I? Sunade smirked slightly, her eyes glittering lightly. And what kind of Hokage would I be if I went back on my word? Now you've done it, Jiraiya said with a groan, as he palmed his face. Well, you better keep that hat warm for me, 'cause I'm gonna be wearing it soon enough, Granny. Naruto grinned back at Sunade, watching her twitch slightly, as he took off running with Kin in his arms. Oh, that cheeky little brat. Sunade growled softly, as she clenched her fingers tightly back into her palms. I'm gonna have him doing D-ranks for a month. No, 2 months. He wants to call me old? Let's see how he likes changing bedpans, and scrubbing backs, and they don't really have D-ranks for that anymore, Princess Jiraiya noted with a smirk. Not since that little tantrum of yours, and the Uchiha elders. Hey, I didn't know those old geezers' hearts were that weak, Sunade protested quickly. And I saved their lives, didn't I? They spent the rest of their days incontinent, Sunade. They still lived. She paused for a moment, before glancing hopefully towards Jiraiya. Think we could do something like that to Danzo? Well, it's always good to keep your hopes up. Jiraiya smiled slightly back at her. We might be able to think of something. Between the two of us, we better be able to, Sunade muttered softly. I leave you two alone for all of half an hour, and you come back here looking like you just went 5 rounds with Orochimaru, Temari said incredulously, as she stared at Naruto. What the hell happened to Kin? It wasn't even 1 round. I got that bastard Kabuto good though, Naruto said with a slight grunt, as he laid Kin out on the couch. Wait, what? Temari shot up ramrod straight, as she stared back at Naruto. Orochimaru. All this training, and I'm still not even good enough to touch the bastard, even when he's weakened, and I'm using the... Naruto's fingers clenched a moment, before sighing softly, as he glanced over at Temari. Go ahead, you can say how pathetic that makes me. Temari stared at Naruto for a moment, and then sighed, as she slumped down. I'm not going to call you pathetic. I got my face stomped down into the ground, and he didn't even bother to make it look hard. If the old pervert hadn't shown up, I'd probably be needing to replace another jacket. He paused, and grimaced lightly, and probably a new head, and whatever else he'd cut out. The only other person I've ever seen that could take on Gaara when he unleashed Shikaku is my father, Temari said suddenly, as she glanced away, and stared down at her hands. No one else. Just my father, the Kazekage. The leader of one of the big five. And he was killed by Orochimaru. You're what, 12? 13. Naruto growled out lightly. 13, Temari agreed with a nod, as she lifted up her hands. So, at 13, you managed to do something it took a Kage to do before. I don't know what it says to you, but I'll be honest, it scares me, and thrills me all the same. Naruto scowled back at her, and opened his mouth to respond only to be lightly bapped atop his head by a fan that had suddenly appeared in her hand. No buts. It absolutely terrifies me because you've pasted a gigantic target on your, and by extension, our backs. Temari nodded towards the still unconscious Kin. We're going to have the monsters of the shinobi world gunning for us. Yes, so? Naruto glared sullenly back at her. And then there's that. You really don't care. I don't know if it's stupidity or supreme confidence, or maybe both. Temari brought her fan out again, catching his chin, and lifting his head up to stare straight. But you won't ever back down, will you? Never. Naruto agreed without looking away, staring defiantly into her eyes. Then I suppose I have no choice but to entrust my fate to your hands, Naruto-sama? She pulled the fan back, bringing it to lightly tap her chin, as she watched the expression of confusion blossoming across his face. Do try, and not disappoint. I'd really hate to go into the afterlife weighted down with the kind of regrets of you not realizing your dream. Naruto's jaw hung open, as he stared back at her. Huh? But you what? You all got caught up in your little dramas, and you left me here alone for the most part, with nothing to do but work on my fans, and think. Temari shrugged a bit, as she rolled her shoulders back, and settled into a seat, staring back at him. What do I do trying to deny this, trying to disbelieve it? Nothing. I'm stuck with this. I can either sulk, and whine, and hate it. She paused, and flicked her wrist, her fan snapping open, and flying a short distance into the air, before quickly jumping back into her hand, and clicking sliding shut. Or I can stand up, and take advantage of the fact that I get the chance to learn from living legends and, with a bit of luck, become one myself. Because I had to be honest with myself, the best I was ever going to be was a strong but never truly one of the elites of our world. Now though, she shrugged her shoulders, and managed a vicious, predatory grin. I grew up buried by the shadows of legends and monsters. Now if I shine bright enough, I might just be a part of a greater one. A greater what? Naruto asked, staring at her in confusion. Legend, of course, Temari replied without even skipping a beat, as she opened and shut the fan in a fluid flicking of her fingers. That or we die in a horribly defiant manner. We're not going to die, Naruto said with a half glare. I'm not going to let that happen. Good, Temari agreed with a nod of her head before she grabbed hold of his arm. Now come on, I need a sparring partner. But Kin-chan, Naruto protested quickly. And we're supposed to be heading back to Konoha soon. Make some clones to pack up while we spar. Temari waved her hand dismissively. They can be here when she wakes up. But she saved my life. Naruto growled back at Temari now, glaring at her, as he stiffened, and straightened his back. You can take the clones, I'm going to stay here, and make sure she's fine. Temari blinked a moment before sighing, as her fan opened then slapped shut across her open palm. I don't know why that surprises me. It really shouldn't. When he glared openly back at her, she merely waved to her fan. Fine, fine. See to our little bitch-chan. I'll settle for the substitutes for now. Naruto just stared at her, unsure of how to react to the sheer difference in attitude Temari was showing since he last saw her, before he frowned just a bit. He was aware of her. The same way he was really aware of Kin. A kind of nagging tug at the back of his mind, affirming that yes, this was the same girl he'd applied the seal to. Did Granny drug you like she did Shizen-chan? He asked, watching the girl speculatively. What? That brought Temari up short, as she turned, and stared incredulously at Naruto. Well, she apparently drugged Shizen-chan to distract the old pervert, so I was wondering if she did something like that to you, Naruto said simply, eyeing her warily. You're acting weird. She sniffed lightly, and crossed her arms about her chest. It's not my fault you can't understand a woman's prerogative to change her mind. But he paused for a moment, his nose scrunching up, as he studied her for a moment. Isn't a sudden change in personality supposed to be a sign of mental instability? She froze a moment, before turning her head, and glaring at him in outright fury, before she snapped open her fan, and began to work it furiously just beyond her face, as she forced a calm smile onto her features. Oh ho ho ho, now really, Naruto-sama, you wouldn't be insinuating something, would you? He stared at her for a moment, before slowly rubbing his face. I'm definitely going to ask Granny to make sure she didn't accidentally drug you. Temari's eye twitches violently, as she clenched tightly on her fan. I am not drugged. Damn it. You sure? If you were anyone else, I would have beaten your head in by now, she stated flatly. Oh yeah, that sounds more like you, Sunshine, Naruto agreed with a sage nod of his head. Yeah, way too loud. Kin's voice grumbled out with a groggy whine. Some of us were trying to sleep. Kin-chan! Naruto exclaimed gleefully, as he grabbed hold of the girl, and practically crushed her to his chest. You're awake! Need ribs! Kin half gasped, half whined, though her lips slightly curled up into a half smile. I swear, if you ever do that again I'll… Naruto paused for a moment, his face scrunching up in thought. Give me a spanking? Kin offered hopefully. Yeah no! Naruto glared at her, as he let out a low growl. No spankings. Lots, and lots of no spankings. But… Kin's eyes swelled up, glistening, as she looked up at him. Didn't I do a good job? Naruto faltered slightly, as he stared back into those pleading black eyes. You do realize she's absolutely faking those tears, right? Temari noted blandly, as she pulled her fan up, and covered her wicked smile. Just to try, and get you to give in, and give her what she wants. Damn it. Kin growled, as she twisted around, and glared angrily at Temari. Why do you have to be such a… Because she slipped the fan out, tapping it lightly atop Kin's head for a moment before it was angrily pushed away by Kin. You're not the only bitch here, Kin-chan. Kin just almost died. Can you two please just try to get along, please? Naruto asked, looking pleadingly between the two of them. Kin and Temari took a moment to look each other up and down, appraising before they both answered in unison. No. Naruto's face darkened for a moment, before suddenly brightening. Fine then. Sunshine-chan gets the spankings, and Kin-chan has to watch. That way everything works out. How the hell does that work out? Temari demanded, as Kin gave an emphatic nod of agreement. Yeah, because now I have a way of punishing you both at once. Naruto crowded triumphantly, and pointed his finger at the two of them in victory. Ha! Take that. The awesome Naruto Uzumaki triumphs again. You know, Temari lightly tapped her lower lip with her fan, as her eyes looked speculatively at Kin. If she enjoys it so much, I suppose I could find a way to enjoy myself. And I do have a very, very good imagination. Kin quickly picked up, nodding, as she leaned forward, her breath lightly teasing against Naruto's neck, as his face suddenly flushed crimson. Haven't you heard of Naruto-sama? Hot, slick, glistening, writhing softly. Temari casually trailed her fan down, bringing it along the top then onto her bare shoulders. Our bodies so hot, so eager. Naruto made faint strangling sounds, as his face turned an even brighter red, struggling desperately to make some kind of semblance of words. So won't you punish us, na are you to say Yama? Kin drew out every little syllable with a half-lidded smile rising across her lips. Naruto fell back, scrambling away, as he stared at the pair with wide, wary eyes, his breath hammering in short, fast breaths. Heh. Temari snapped her fan open, and before raising a brow. You seem awfully red over there. Naruto-sama, is there something that matters? Maybe he's coming down with a fever? Kin asked thoughtfully, as she lightly tapped the side of her mouth. We better get him out of those clothes, and into bed. Might have to break out the restraints, just to make sure he stays there. Temari agreed with a smirk. Eyes wide, Naruto made a quick sign, and suddenly he vanished in a puff of smoke, replaced by a falling door. A rather familiar door in fact. When they turned their heads, they caught a bright glimpse of orange pants vanishing out of the now empty door frame. Temari took one look at Kin before suddenly bursting out into laughter, as she fell onto her back. Kin broke into a smirk, and chuckled lightly herself. Then, she froze, as she slowly came to a realization. An instant later, she broke into a stream of colorful curses. What's wrong this time? Temari asked with a hint of exasperation, as she calmed down, and wiped the tears out of her eyes. I didn't get my spanking. Jiraiya took a moment to blink, as he watched his apprentice slam the door shut behind him with wide, panicked eyes. Then he shook his head, and sighed softly, as he quietly resumed packing up. You know, you really should stop letting them scare you so much, brat. But… Naruto glanced around, his eyes wide before he suddenly pointed straight at him. You! This is all your fault. It's nice you think so, but I doubt it. Jiraiya started with a bemused drawl, as he continued to seal up his thoughts. And you should really get packing, we're leaving soon. Liar! He declared without skipping a beat. Only Kin was a pervert before you came along. Jiraiya paused for a moment, blinking slightly, before he tilted his head to the side. A grin suddenly split his face, and he quickly produced a notebook. Oh, do tell. I mentioned doing that thing Kin really likes to Sunshine, and making Kin watch so I could punish them both, Naruto said with a bright blush creeping up his cheeks. And then they just... He shrugged helplessly, his face blushing brightly before he glared at Jiraiya, as the man suddenly burst out laughing. Hey! It's not funny! Naruto growled back at the man. Kid, let me guess, they went and made it sound like they'd enjoy it in oh so interesting ways? Jiraiya waggled his eyebrows back at Naruto, and chuckled, as the boy blushed further. Thought so. They were using kunoichi tactics 101. Turn it back on them in a seductive manner. Every kunoichi learns that stuff in the academy. But Naruto's mouth opened, as he stared back at Jiraiya in disbelief. Didn't they teach you to watch out for it? Jiraiya arched his brow, as Naruto sheepishly scratched the back of his head. I might have been absent that day, Naruto said sheepishly with a shrug of his shoulders. Jiraiya paused, and arched a brow back at him. And exactly how often were you absent? Often enough to have a specialized response squad? Naruto shrugged slightly, and grinned nervously. Of course you did, Jiraiya sighed softly, and gave Naruto a flat look. Well, I did spend a lot more time in class those first 6 months, Naruto admitted with a wince. But it was so boring. You know, sometimes I wonder how you survived this long. I really do, Jiraiya muttered softly, and shook his head. So, I take it that she's doing better? She wanted a spanking, Naruto said with a huff and a grumble. You are definitely the oddest kid I know, Jiraiya shook his head, and sighed slightly, as he rubbed his face. So many guys would kill to be in your position. He paused for a moment, glancing with a half-worried expression on his face. Are you one of those blue boy types? Huh? Naruto blinked in confusion for a moment before a half-remembered conversation immediately made him flush, and glare back at him. No, not that there's anything wrong with it, of course, Jiraiya said quickly, as he held up his hands. It's just girls throwing themselves at you, and you turn, and run away. I like girls, Naruto growled back at him, his eyes narrowed into slits. I've been trying to get a date with Sakura-chan since forever. And it's not just you trying to get her to be your beard? Jiraiya clarified, as he tilted his head to the side. Naruto's nonverbal growl was more than answered, as Jiraiya reached down, and lightly ruffled his hair. Just making sure because that's what people will think. For a moment, Naruto blinked then stared at him, his mouth suddenly dropping. But if I do that, everyone will think I'm a pervert. Let me impart upon you one of the greatest bits of wisdom there is. My young student Jiraiya raised his hand, an expression of grave severity upon his features. Everyone is a pervert. Liar! Nope, everyone is. Jiraiya nodded his head sagely, before pausing. Well, except for the ones who are completely asexual, but those don't count. Ha! You just admitted you were wrong, Naruto stated triumphantly. Look, kid, everyone has a degree of a pervert in them. Some more so than others, he said, as he waggled his eyebrows back at him. You're male, and you're going to be constantly surrounded by pretty girls that are going to become some very sexy women. If you keep running from them every time they try to do something a bit perverted, they'll assume you just don't like women. But then they'll think I'm like you, Naruto said with a look of horror on his face. Do you like girls? Jiraiya asked bluntly. Yes, then be willing to show it. And for the Kami's sake, give that girl her damn spankings already. She just almost died to protect you. She deserves a reward, Jiraiya said with a roll of his eyes, as he lightly pushed the boy towards the door. You need to start showing some of that crazy confidence you have everywhere else. But, and for the love of all that's right in the world, take your blonde girlfriend on a date when we get back. Jiraiya firmly pushed him out of the room. Now, go finish packing, and see your girls. She's not my girlfriend. So, I notice you haven't been working the shop much lately, Inoichi Yamanaka stated simply, as he took a seat across from his daughter. Ino blinked slightly, as she stared at her father for a moment. What? You haven't been working at the shop? You know, your mother's flower shop? He said in a way of clarification, as he stared back at her, neutrally. Oh, yeah, I've been training a lot, she stated with a shrug of her shoulders. No big. Really? There was no small amount of skepticism in his voice, as he arched a brow back at her. Because I've been seeing Shikamaru and Choji down at the restaurants, and lying about pretty often. Those lazy little finks, they told me they were training. Ino fumed, her fingers clenching. When I get my hands on them. They thought my last batch was bad? Oh, I'll get them but good. Inoichi blinked slightly, as he stared at Ino, obviously not having expected his daughter's reaction. Ino-chan, what have you been doing? Training, I just told you, Ino repeated with a flash of irritation moving across her face, as she glared lightly at her father. But I just told you that your team is full of lazy bastards, she stated flatly, as she crossed her arms about her chest. So I have to go get training elsewhere. Elsewhere? He wasn't sure why he felt a cold, dripping trickle of doom moving down his spine at the words, frowning lightly. Where exactly are you getting training, Ino? The crazy lady from the second stage of the exams, and the ANBU lady with purple hair that likes to cut people up, she responded with a shrug. They're bored since Naruto-kun's out of town. Wait. That cold drip turned into a sudden, ice-cold waterfall, fed fresh from a glacier. You're getting training from Anko, and you go? Yup, time for me to go meet up with them now. She hopped up, smiling brightly, and gave him a jaunty wave. Have a good day at work. Inoichi stared for a moment, as he watched the way his daughter vanished out the door, before another bit of information finally settled into his mind. Wait, Naruto-kun? Ibiki. I want this one. Ibiki Marino blinked slightly, as he looked up at a grim-faced Inoichi, and slightly tilted his head to the side. And why the hell would I let you? Thought you were done with this side of TI? Because I just found out my daughter is getting training from Anko, and you go. Inoichi stated flatly, as he stared back at Ibiki. And she called the Uzumaki Naruto-kun. There was, of course, only one the Uzumaki in Konoha. During its founding it had been Mido, the wife of the Shodai Hokage. Later it became Kushina. Now, that distinction has passed on to Naruto. What's the problem? He's an interesting brat. Might suck at stealing answers, but damned if I've ever seen someone turn an atmosphere into a complete 180. As fast as he can, Ibiki said simply, pointedly ignoring the implications of the first part of Inoichi's statement. It means my daughter is now interested in a boy. An actual boy, with boy parts, unlike the Uchiha, Inoichi stated for clarification. An actual boy with actual boy hormones. Ibiki smirked slightly back at his older subordinate. Sucks to be you. And you're not going to say anything about Anko, and you to go training my daughter? Inoichi's irritation was audible, as he lightly glared back at the head of his department. I already knew about it. He shrugged his shoulders before pushing a button on his desk. Harino. Instantly a familiar head of pink hair popped out of the door to the office. Yes, Marino-san? Hello, Yamanaka-san. Sakura? Inoichi blinked, then blinked again, staring at the girl. What are you doing here? Helping Marino-san organize his non-sensitive files, Sakura paused a moment before sending a mild glare at the smirking man. His clerical filing system was positively atrocious. Yes, some of us have actual work to do instead of worrying about where the requisition files go. Ibiki waved his hand dismissively. And besides, now I have you here to do that. How anyone found anything in that mess you call the filing system is beyond me, Sakura said with a grumble. They were organized perfectly fine. It was all by bloodstain. Ibiki started with a completely straight face. I don't even want to think about why that finger was in there, Sakura said with a light grumble. Oh, so that's where Morisato's finger went? Inoichi couldn't help but comment. She's pretty good about organizing things. Picks up things quite quickly, Ibiki noted with a shrug. She just sucks with people. Sakura glared at Ibiki but held her tongue. She is getting better with her temper though, he admitted with a slight smirk. She was about ready to physically assault people for a comment like that when I first took her in. Went berserk in a spa with your daughter. Sakura flushed bright right, her eyes immediately dropping down to her feet. Inoichi blinked slightly. But Ino wasn't in the hospital for anything like that. She wasn't, Ibiki agreed with a smirk, and a nod towards Sakura. Your little girl put her in there. For a moment Inoichi just stood there, blinking, as he tried to process exactly what Ibiki said. Ino Maino, put Sakura in the hospital? Pinky here rather forced her to do it, Ibiki agreed serenely, and nodded towards Sakura. Of course, considering what your girl did to her looks like we've got another sadist in the making. I don't want to know, do I? Inoichi asked rhetorically, as he slowly rubbed his face. This just gets more and more complicated. There's a storm coming, Ibiki stated simply, not even glancing towards Sakura, as he spoke. All of the veterans can feel it. And I have a feeling that in the end it's going to be these rookies right in the heart of it all. I hope you're wrong, Ibiki. I truly hope you're wrong, Inoichi said softly, as his own eyes stared blankly past Ibiki. As it went unspoken he hoped he was wrong, as well. Either way, we need to get these brats whipped into shape, Ibiki said with a smirk, suddenly changing the mood entirely. Won't do to have us looking like a bunch of idiots out there on the field, now will it? Wordlessly Inoichi nodded his head before eyeing Sakura critically. You've got a full schedule today, don't you, Ibiki? Are you volunteering to put Pinky here through some training? I was thinking she needs proper evaluation, Inoichi said simply. Sakura felt a cold shiver running down her spine, as Ibiki barked off a laugh, and nodded viciously in agreement. That she does. Well, Pinky, I'll leave you in his perfectly capable hands. She just knew this was gonna suck. Home at last, Naruto crowed eagerly, as he practically bounced up towards the gate. I suppose it would be too much to ask for him to show at least a little restraint, Temari asked rhetorically, as she lightly rolled her fan around her hand in a lazy manner. Kin agreed with a nod, and a shrug of her shoulders, as she made certain her mask was pulled up over her nose. Naruto-sama is Naruto-sama, so I remember. Temari sighed slightly, and shook her head, as she unconsciously fingered the engraved collar at her throat. Now cute little spoils should be seen, not heard, Sunade said with a smirk, as she appeared behind them. You wouldn't want to get your master in trouble, would you? Really, Sunade-sama, there's no need to be so mean to them, Shizen protested before glaring lightly at the woman. After all, they're not the ones that drug women, and leave them in the hands of a known pervert. Naked, Nyinja, Sunade countered with a smug look. And it worked, though he probably had to keep his groping to a minimum. I was a complete and total gentleman, Jiraiya grumbled, as he glared back at Sunade. If you were, I'm sure you're cursing lost opportunities, Sunade said with a smirk. Though I doubt it. Shizen blushed crimson, staring at her feet, as she shuffled along. Yes, it was quite the missed opportunity. Shizen-chan is such a wonderful example of womanhood, Jiraiya agreed, as he threw a wink at Shizen, and continued. It must be horrible, knowing that you have to use your apprentice because you can't do it yourself anymore. Sunade immediately twitched at that, sending a baleful glare back at Jiraiya. Something the matter, princess? He asked entirely too innocently for her tastes. No, just thinking about the new renovations all the hot springs and bath houses are going to need, she responded sweetly. All those old holes that need to be boarded up, and all of those walls that need to be strengthened and raised a good 5 feet. We have to defend them against perverts, after all. Jiraiya paused for a moment, his eyes narrowed into slits before he slowly rubbed his hands together. So we're going to play that game, are we, princess? Temari glanced over at a suddenly groaning Shizen. We don't want to know, do we? No you don't, Shizen agreed with a sad shake of her head. It'll destroy what little illusion remains of them, as great and noble shinobi. Go ahead, and tell me then. Mine already ground itself into dust, Kin noted with a smirk. Funny, Sunade stated flatly, as she eyed the girls, and snorted softly. I should put you through medic nin training just for that. With my control? Kin looked back at Sunade incredulously. Are you kidding me? Do you want me to kill someone? Sunade rubbed her chin thoughtfully, as she glanced over at Jiraiya. They'd never go for it. They'd demand the best, not just some half-trained apprentice, Jiraiya said sadly, and shook his head. Damn it, I hate it when you're right, she admitted with a sour twist of her lips, and sighed softly. Oh well, we'll eventually come up with an appropriately believable accident. Whatever you say, Princess Jiraiya agreed with a bemused smirk pulling over his lips. Halt! Statio. There was a pause in the gate's orders, as he realized who he was staring at. Jiraiya-sama? And Sunade-sama? Yeah, it's the old pervert, and Granny. Can we get in already? Naruto demanded impatiently. TCH, relax already, you impatient little brat, Sunade muttered a bit, and sighed, as she glared back at the boy who scowled back at her, then turned to the gate guard. Sunade Senju, returning, as requested by the council. Ah, right. The fumbled a moment before quickly bowing to the group, and stepping away from the gate. They're expecting you. Sunade glanced questioningly towards Jiraiya, who shrugged and responded, I sent a toad ahead of us. Ah, then let's not keep them waiting? Sunade chuckled softly before frowning just a bit. They're not going to make me wear the hat, are they? It is part of the job, Jiraiya noted neutrally. But it clashes with my favorite uniform. Sunade grumbled slightly, before brightening. Well, you know what that means. Time for me, and Naruto to make like shinobi. CYA. Jiraiya agreed before vanishing in a puff of smoke, and dragging Naruto along with him. HRMPH. After all these years the idiot still runs away at the slightest mention of me taking him shopping with me, Sunade said with a note of irritation. It wasn't that bad. A toad suddenly appeared in front of them, bearing a scroll it tossed up to Sunade before vanishing. He didn't, Sunade said incredulously before carefully unrolling the visibly aged scroll, and stared at the writing it contained. He did. That idiot actually did it. Sunade-heim, if you're reading this, the thing I feared most of all has come to pass, and you were about to try and drag me off for another shopping trip. Please forgive me for, while I do enjoy seeing you in all those outfits, especially that cute little yukata that barely fits you, you nearly crushed my spine making me carry all those clothes. I like my spine where it is, thank you very much. Jiraiya, the awesome Tonin. I'm going to kill him, Sunade stated simply, as she fought down her blush. Slowly, painfully, and crushing that thing he calls a spine into a fine powder. Shizen peeked over her shoulder, blinking slightly. Cute little yukata, Sunade-sama? Shut up, Shizen. Phew, we made it, Jiraiya sighed in relief, as they appeared in front of Naruto's apartment before grinning widely. My secret evade shopping trip technique was a success. What's with you, and Kakashi-sensei, and shopping? Naruto stared back at Jiraiya, blinking in confusion. One of us, most likely you, hey, would have said something stupid, and gotten them pissed at us even more so than they are for us refusing to go with them, Jiraiya stated simply. And we both would have suffered. HRMPH, Naruto crossed his arms about his chest, and glared back at Jiraiya. You're crazy. Thinking about how annoying they can be, Jiraiya paused for a moment to allow Naruto to recall the experience. Now, imagine them being about 10 times or so worse. Naruto's brow furrowed, and he looked back at Jiraiya before shaking his head. I don't believe you. Besides, can't I just punish them for it if they try? Jiraiya opened his mouth to correct the boy, then paused, recalling just what the boy's situation was in regards to Temari and Kin. Well, with your girls, yes, though there's still the princess to deal with, and she can't. Granny's your problem, though not mine, Naruto said with a smug smirk on his lips, as he crossed his arms triumphantly across his chest. Jiraiya stared back at him before pausing for a moment, and smirking at Naruto. Ah, but your little blonde Yamanaka isn't. Naruto groaned softly. Ino doesn't really like me. She just thinks she does for some stupid reason. You're an idiot, Jiraiya stated bluntly, and shook his head. Naruto just glared back at him. And you don't know what you're talking about. No, you're just being an idiot, Jiraiya declared firmly, as he glared at Naruto. And I do believe I already gave you an order on what you're supposed to do with her. What the hell? Naruto stared at Jiraiya, his mouth hanging ageki. You're ordering to go on a date with her? As you're too dumb to do it yourself. Yes, he agreed with a nod, and crossed his arms about his chest. And you've got the money to, so don't even try weaseling your way out of it. She likes Sasuke, Naruto repeated angrily. What is so hard about you understanding that? Sasuke, she, and Sakura have been fighting over him for years. This is just some fad for her. I know women. Not a fad, Jiraiya countered in turn. You're a pervert who peeps on women in the baths. Not knowing women, Naruto growled back, and glared at Jiraiya. Super pervert, thank you very much. Jiraiya corrected before giving the boy a look. And I happen to know plenty about women. Liar, Naruto stated flatly. I do, Jiraiya insisted, as his look started to grow into a glare. Which is why Granny always wants to beat you into a smear on the ground. Sunade is a completely different and unique case, he said defensively. I've known her since before your parents were even born. Right, Naruto just snorted slightly, and shook his head. Thankfully you shouldn't have to deal with that kind of issue, Jiraiya continued, as he ignored Naruto. She knows your situation, and she's still interested. She's smart, she's determined, and she's going to be a damned looker. What more do you want, kid? I want to. Naruto opened his mouth to respond before frowning slightly. Did he really want Sakura anymore? She just wanted to be Hokage. It was a lame finish, and they both knew it, as Jiraiya gave the kid a look. That's nice, now go find the girl, and ask her on a date. But, what about Sakura-chan? Naruto asked suddenly, desperately. Your teammate? Have you ever asked her on a date? Jiraiya questioned casually. Yes. Has she ever said yes? No, Naruto admitted with slumped shoulders. Did she ever blush when she did it? Or just get angry, and tell you off and or hit you? She only really blushes if Sasuke's involved, Naruto admitted before frowning lightly. What's that have to do with anything? Yeah, it means to give up on her, at least for a while. She's not interested, which is all the more reason to go on a date with a girl who is interested. But, date. Don't, date. Naruto paused for a moment, and just glared up at Jiraiya, only to find the man's arms crossed about his chest, and standing resolutely before him. Damn it. And make sure you bring her something nice. Jewelry would be best since she already works at a flower shop. Jiraiya nodded his head, and rummaged around his vest before pulling out a slim jewelry case. This will do nicely. Cautiously Naruto opened up the case to find a slim, elegant silver chain bracelet, and then blinked in surprise. But wait a minute! You planned this. Of course I did. By the way, never leave your wallet unsupervised around a better ninja than you are. Jiraiya agreed before pulling out a piece of paper. Your reservations are here. You can pick up your outfit here. And for Kami's sake, please be early. But, and don't worry about reimbursing me. That overstuffed wallet of yours paid for this. Just don't forget to tip the serving staff, Jiraiya stated, as he handed Naruto a noticeably smaller wallet. I'd also recommend getting a manlier wallet. Gama-chan. He was so nice, and full of life. You bastard. Naruto clutched his wallet to his chest, and stared in horror at the toad-shaped wallet. Best get used to money being this way now. Easy come, easy go. It is the will of Kami, Jiraiya said sagely. So, best to spend it on fine food, fine clothes, and fine women. He paused a moment before smirking. And when you're older, fine wine. Naruto was less than understanding. Yo. Ino blinked slightly, and stared at the smirking form of Anko lazily leaning against the side of the building. I'm not running late or something, am I? Nope, training's cancelled today, Anko said, as her smirk only grew in size. Why does that worry me? Ino wondered aloud, as she warily glanced around. I don't have to worry about something like you deciding to spend the rest of the day randomly throwing dango sticks at me again, do I? Well, I was going to ask if you wanted to come with me to the Brat's welcome back party. But if you'd rather do that, I'm game. Anko grinned back at Ino. Naruto's back? Ino's eyes lit up immediately. When did he get back? Where is he? Does my hair look alright? Oh, Cammy, I don't have any makeup. Damn, when you get it, you go full hog, don't you, princess? Anko laughed out loud, and shook her head. No wonder Inoichi went spare. Daddy will get over it. Ino waved her hand dismissively. I mean, he never got worked up by me going after Sasuke, right? Anko paused a moment, her face twisting in expression for a moment, before suddenly bursting out into more gut-busting laughter. Ah ha ha ha. Damn, I don't know why I never thought about teaching you little mini-mean earlier. I've never laughed so damned much before. What's so funny this time? Ino frowned, her brow furrowing in confusion, before quickly shaking her head and stomping her foot lightly. Never mind. Where's Naruto? Oh, relax, and keep your panties on, Anko grinned at her. I want to watch Inoichi squirm a lot more before he surrenders to the inevitable. Ino blushed a bright crimson, as she stared back at Anko. Damn it, don't you have any shame? I left it in my other jacket, Anko said with a shrug and a grin. It clashed with this sexy body of mine. You're impossible. Do I have to track Naruto down myself? Ino paused a moment before frowning. You know what? He's probably at home. Doubtful. Anko grinned back at her, her eyes shining. You know something. Yup, and you're not going to tell me, and spoil my fun? Ino groaned, and slumped forward slightly. And I have to go with you in order to find out what. And who says I can't teach? Anko crowed, and laughed, as she ruffled Ino's hair. Come on, let's go. Onwards. For my great amusement. My life used to be so much simpler, Ino noted with a groan, as she nonetheless followed after Anko. Naruto looked at the scene before him with a look that bordered somewhere between absolute horror and supreme loathing, and somehow never managed to lose the extreme strength of either. I have to do what? Naruto shouted, as he stared at the stuffy-looking shinobi armed with a tape measure, and what looked like thin miniature. We're here to get you measured up so we can have you looking like a proper young man instead of an eyesore for your date, the stuffy shinobi said simply, as he deftly cracked the tape measure like a whip at Naruto's hand when the boy tried to tug at a part of the outfit. No squirming. There was another glare sent at Jiraiya, who ignored it with a roll of his eyes. It's all about learning to blend in, brat. Not just down in the gutters but also among the rich, the noble, the refined, and those who think they are. I'm a fighter. Not a broody peacock. Naruto quickly protested. That's what we have Sasuke for. Jiraiya stifled a snort of amusement, as he shook his head, while the tailor chuckled softly. Less than you know, kid. Way less than you know. Huh. Naruto blinked in confusion before scowling again. Have you ever seen Sasuke? He's all HN this, and glare that. You know, when you finally realize the truth, I'm going to laugh, Jiraiya stated mysteriously, his eyes glittering. Oh, how I will laugh. You, and half the shinobi forces, the tailor agreed with a chuckle. The rest of them will be wondering why we're laughing. Huh! Naruto stared in confusion at the conversation. Oh, you'll see, Jiraiya said mysteriously, as his eyes glittered mischievously. You'll see. There were always times where words failed to properly sum up the sheer reaction a person could experience due to a specific stimulus. Ino Yamanaka was experiencing such a reaction, as she stared in sheer, open-mouthed shock, summed up by a slurring mumble of syllables. Wahoo? Anko was smirking, as she pushed the girl into the boutique, her eyes shining with barely constrained mirth, as she rubbed her hands together. F-f-f-f. Now, my young apprentice, it has come time for you to truly take my entertainment to the next level. Instantly, Ino's eyes snapped back up to Anko's face, as she flushed lightly, and glared at the woman. I am not your apprentice, and I don't exist for your amusement. Yes, you do, Anko countered brightly, as she held up a piece of paper. I win you for a week in poker. What? Ino grabbed the paper from Anko's hand, and scanned it quickly before her face flushed even brighter. I'm going to kill him. That's nice, but in the meantime come, my little minion. We have preparations to do, and first... Anko's grin only grew in size, as she spread her arms wide. First? Ino asked warily, as she glanced around her, and then blinked back at Anko. First, make over. Really? Ino blinked, then perked up visibly, as she looked at Anko hopefully. Really, really? Anko agreed, nodding her head eagerly, as she rubbed her hands together. Would I lie to you about something like that? Yes, Ino agreed without a moment's hesitation. My precious student wounds me. Anko sighed dramatically, clutching her hand over her heart, before giggling softly. Don't you trust your wise and learned sensei? As soon as I get one, I'll let you know, Ino stated in a complete deadpan. So a makeover? If I wasn't going to be enjoying the end result of this so much, I'd be changing my mind right now. You're lucky I'll get more enjoyment out of this than I would out of denying you, princess. Anko stuck her tongue out childishly at Ino. I know somehow there's going to be something in this to make me regret it, but Ino glanced around the boutique for a moment before grinning. I might as well try to enjoy it as much as I can. That's the spirit, Anko agreed with a grin. Now come along, my little dress-up doll. Time to get you all decked out. I am not a doll. Does it fit? Jiraiya asked curiously, as he looked at where Naruto was glaring at him in an elegant red and black outfit. Yes, Naruto said curtly. Good, now on to colognes. I hate you. Does it fit? Anko asked curiously, as she peeked over and eyed the pale blue dress that hugged Ino's body. Not bad, not bad. It looks good, Ino agreed with a nod. Maybe a pile? Maybe pile, Ino agreed with a perky nod. Next? Oh, I have this nice black leather and mesh. Save that for the bitch. I'm not the kinky one, Ino said with a slight blush. Besides, this is for a date, remember? Oh, foo. You're no fun, Anko pouted lightly before pulling out a piece of black silk. The next Kunoichi's best friend? Oh, the little black dress. Ino quickly nodded her head before pausing. Wait, I don't want to look too eager. It's the brat. It'd go over his head. Better to save it for a special occasion. More special than your first date. Isn't that implied in what I said? Ino huffed slightly. Ah, right, save it for that special night, Anko agreed with a waggle of her eyebrows. Shut up. Ino blushed crimson and looked away, though she refused to stutter. Fufufa. Ah, my cute little student is growing up so fast, Anko mimed, wiping a tear from her eye. I've only known you for a couple of months, and look at how you've grown. Anko agreed before pausing and rubbing her chin a moment, glancing down at her chest. Though, admittedly, you probably won't ever be able to compare to the magnificence that is me. But really, who outside the Hyuga can? Grrrr, Ino growled back at her with a gnashing of her teeth. Relax. If he was interested in that kind of stuff, he would have been all over Kurenai's girl. Anko waved her hand dismissively, and then chuckled. I will get you, one of these days, Ino promised. Sure. Next dress then? Anko asked cheerfully. I want to try the black one first. Fufufufu. Of course you do. How are the shoes? Jiraiya asked curiously, as he glanced back at Naruto. Stiff, uncomfortable, and shoe-like? Naruto half-whined, as he pouted at Jiraiya. Why can't I wear my usual? No, Jiraiya responded swiftly, and firmly with a shake of his head. You are going on a date, you will dress appropriately. This isn't even a real date. Yes, it is, and you will make sure that girl enjoys herself, and your company. You're insane, you know that? Naruto stared back at Jiraiya for a moment. Completely and utterly insane. Just walk around in those shoes for a bit. They'll get more comfortable the longer you wear them. Shoes? Anko asked with a slight arch of the brow. Are you kidding me? With this dress? Ino stared back at Anko for a moment. I know you have an underdeveloped sense of fashion. Hey, I mean, the size of those things on your chest has got to cut off some of the blood flow to your brain. Guh. But even you should be able to tell those straps are completely wrong for this dress. I think I have some straps that will look just perfect around your throat, Anko said sweetly, as her eyes narrowed. They'll be very helpful in getting your face to match that wine-colored dress. Ino blinked a moment, as Anko's words registered before quickly holding up her hands in front of her. Oh no, I've got a horrible complexion for that. I'd get all blotchy and stuff. That's what concealer is for, my cute little student, Anko stated simply, as she took a step towards Ino. It'll ruin the date? Yeah. Can't go ruining Naruto-kun's date night, right? Ino asked quickly, as she quickly picked up a pair of shoes, seemingly at random. Plus, think of the shoes. You don't want to subject them to something like that, right? Anko's eyes narrowed into slits, as she nonetheless glanced at the plethora of shoes surrounding them. Reluctantly, she straightened up, and simply glared at Ino. You're lucky there are so many innocent bystanders, princess. We'll pick this up later. Right, later, Ino nodded in agreement before muttering under her breath. Much later. Not that much later, Anko disagreed with a sweet voice. We still have training in the morning. Curses, Ino muttered sourly. Are we going to accessorize? The shinobi with the tape measure asked Jiraiya. Jiraiya opened his mouth to respond, only to quickly shut it when he felt Naruto's glare hit him. I think my little student here is reaching the limit. Depends, do you want me to send clone patrols to every bathhouse in a 10-mile radius to warn them about you? Naruto asked with narrowed eyes. But, My research, Jiraiya protested quickly. My dignity, Naruto growled back. Dignity is overrated. Research lasts longer. Dignity doesn't keep you warm on those long, lonely nights, Jiraiya countered, as his eyes took on a distant look, a slight line of drool forming at the corner of his mouth. Ugh! Naruto quickly took a step away from him. That's just, ugh! Keep living in denial, young shinobi. It creeps up on you faster that way. Heh heh heh! Jiraiya chuckled menacingly, as his eyes gleamed. Now, accessories, Ino chirped eagerly, as she rubbed her hands together. Nothing gaudy, Anko stated firmly, as she crossed her arms about her chest. Who do you think you're talking to? Ino huffed in irritation. I am the queen of style and elegance, who sucks at seduction, Anko reminded her with a light grin. But I always look good, Ino said, tilting her head back challengingly, as she glared challengingly at Anko. Oh really? Anko's lips split into a creepy grin, as she began to slowly chuckle. Foo foo foo, I'm going to regret saying that, aren't I? Ino fought down the whimper that wanted to burst past her lips. Now worry too much, and it will start giving you wrinkles. Anko's grin didn't dissipate in the least, as she spoke. So, going to regret it, Ino paused for a moment, eyeing Anko thoughtfully. You know I'm going to make you pay if you say it, so best to make sure it's worth it, princess. What, making comments about the eventual issues with sagging, back pain, and stuff like that? I'd never dream of it, Ino said with an overly sweet smile. HRMPH, well, at least you didn't chicken out, even if you will regret the day your great-grandparents ever met, Anko admitted grudgingly before smiling cheerfully. So, how about these earrings? Sakura blinked then blinked again, as she caught sight of a familiar head of blonde hair carefully walking down the street in a beautiful blue dress. Ino? Blinking slightly, Ino blushed a bit, and offered up a light wave. Oh hey Sakura, where are you going all dressed up like that? There was a pause before Sakura smiled slyly, and winked at her. You got a hot date you didn't tell me about. Actually I didn't even know about it until a couple of hours ago, Ino said, as her blush grew slightly in intensity. Sakura blinked, and then blinked again. Wait, what? You have a date? What did you think? I just dressed up to make everyone think I did. Ino glared lightly back at Sakura, as her fingers clenched back into fists, while Sakura shrugged her shoulders helplessly. Now girls, you can wait until tomorrow to have your rematch, Anko interjected cheerfully. I spent too much time getting the princess here ready for her date with the brat for you to go, and ruin all that work. There was a pause before suddenly her smile grew fixed, as the shadows grew across her face. Am I clear? Sakura instinctively shrank away from the frightening expression, as Ino shivered involuntarily. Yes, ma'am. Damn it, you're scary enough, as it was before. Where the hell did you learn to do that? Ino whined slightly, as she flinched at the look. A friend of mine in ANBU, Anko said cheerfully, her expression instantly melting back to bright and cheery. Wait, Sakura paused for a moment, before turning her stare back to Ino. You said the brat was Naruto? You're going on a date with Naruto? Yes? Ino glanced towards Anko, who just grinned back at her. Unless this is just her idea of a twisted and evil joke, which I really wouldn't put past her, but I think she's being legit right now. Oh, how my cute little student wounds me. However will I recover? Anko mock swooned before rubbing her chin thoughtfully. Well, besides an extra 10 minutes of being my walking target, Naruto's back, and nobody told me? Sakura stared back at Ino before the rest of things caught up with her mind. And the first thing he's doing is going on a date with you. Well, in his defense, we're not giving them a choice in the matter, Anko agreed with a grin. But if it makes you feel any better, your third teammate is probably going to end up waking up any time now since Sunade-sama went to the hospital about an hour or so ago. Sasuke-kun's going to wake up. Sakura's eyes widened before grinning triumphantly at Ino. Well, since you're going on a date with Naruto, that means all the more Sasuke-kun for me. See you. As Ino blinked slightly, she watched Sakura run away. Okay, Anko asked, as she was visibly struggling to not burst into laughter. What were you expecting me to do? Ino blinked slightly in confusion. I mean, I'm not that bad. Anko couldn't fight it any longer, as she leaned back, and exploded with laughter. Sasuke-kun, you're awake! Sakura exclaimed with a happy sigh of relief, as she burst into the room, and saw her teammates sitting up in the bed. Sakura, Sasuke nodded slightly towards her before frowning a bit, and looking around worriedly. Where's Naruto? Is he alright? The last thing I remember is she frowned, her eyes narrowing. Itachi, Naruto's fine, Sakura said quickly before frowning slightly. Why wouldn't he be? I mean, he's being a jerk by going out on a date with Ino instead of coming here to make sure you're alright. But, wait, what? Sasuke's eyes snapped onto Sakura with a frighteningly focused intensity. Sakura shifted uncomfortably beneath the attention. I know, it's rude of him, but well, Naruto. He's an idiot. And Ino. She stopped there, struggling for the words. Naruto and Ino? Sasuke repeated, her stare blunted with disbelief. But I thought, you're still so much cooler than Naruto, Sasuke-kun. But this does mean that you don't have to worry about Ino. Sakura pausing, as Sasuke quickly starts to move out of bed. Wait, should you be moving yet? Are you even released? Back off, Sakura, Sasuke growled, her mind flashing back to the cold, bored disinterest Itachi had shown her, her last memories before being dismissed in favor of Naruto. It burned off anger, jealousy, and fear. A dark, rotten flame that pulsed through her veins. Then the sudden, searing pain of the seal on her back flaring to life brought her back to reality. Ah! Instinctively Sasuke grabbed the back of her neck, hissing softly, as she clenched her eyes tightly shut. Sasuke! Instantly Sakura reached out towards Sasuke, only to have her hand batted away with an angry glare. I said back off, Sasuke hissed, her eyes flashing crimson, as Sakura suddenly found herself staring into spinning, half-mature Sharingan eyes. Only she suddenly felt the stinging slap of Sakura's hand slapping out across her face, a surprising strength behind it knocking her face to the side. The shock of it stung more than the actual blow had, as suddenly Sasuke could see the fury in Sakura's eyes flashing through her mind again and again. She almost found herself doing the same back to Sakura, the movement begging to be unleashed, but something, most likely the fury dripping through Sakura's every little tremble, held her hand. I'm trying to help you. Sakura glared, tears glistening in her eyes as she clenched her fingers back into her dress, digging into the crimson fabric, as her eyes vanished beneath her pink bangs. You, Naruto, Ino, and Kakashi-sensei are all I have left. I don't want to lose you too. For a moment Sasuke's mouth went dry, as she struggled to find the words, thinking back, trying desperately to remember what she'd wanted someone to say to her. How she'd ached to have someone comfort her when her world turned into a broken pillar of dust. Just remember that, Sakura said softly before she turned, and suddenly she just shrank back, her voice growing soft, almost meek, as the realization of what she'd just done settled in. I need to go. And with that Sasuke was suddenly left alone, staring at an empty frame with her cheeks slowly turning a splotchy pink within the outline of a palm print, and a whispering sea of doubts and indecisions. Temari glanced over at Kin, then towards Shizen before she saw a vaguely familiar crop of pink hair flashing through the hallways of the hospital in a brisk walk that bordered, barely, on the verge of a full-out run. Hey, isn't that HRM? Kin turned her head towards where Sakura was quickly moving past them, tunnel vision preventing her from looking anywhere but straight ahead. Oh, her? Shizen asked curiously, as she glanced at the pink-haired girl, one of Naruto-sama's teammates. The boring one, Kin said blandly, as she recalled her encounter with the girl. She's one of Naruto-kun's teammates? Shizen blinked in surprise before frowning lightly. Oh my, she looks upset. I don't see why. Sunade's voice cut in, irritation leaking into her words, as she walked back up to the small group. I just got finished pulling her sensei and other teammates out of that nasty little coma of theirs. Are they alright? Shizen asked her teacher questionably. Have you forgotten who you're talking to? Sunade gave Shizen a reproachful look before grunting lightly. Come on. There's one other team they want me to check on, then we can get out of here, and get those two somewhere they won't cause trouble. You mean somewhere you can get some booze? Temari noted with a slight smirk. Same difference, Sunade said simply with a shrug of her shoulders. Now come on. We live to serve, Kin said with a bow while Temari and Sunade both snorted in chorus. If that was true, the brat would be much happier, Sunade said with a roll of her eyes. Well, I don't know. I think at least Kinchan tries, Shizen said thoughtfully, as she lightly tapped her lower lip. She's just too direct about it. He's started tying her up before he goes to bed at night, Temari agreed with a smirk of her own. If she wasn't so frustrated, I think she'd be enjoying it. It's getting absolutely ridiculous, Kin muttered sourly, as she crossed her arms over her stomach, and scowled angrily. Might be a better idea to let him get more comfortable with the idea, Shizen said diplomatically, as she opened up the door to their destination. What the hell are you doing here? The voice was almost shrieking, as a kunai was immediately pointed straight at Temari, as the room was revealed to have a visitor in addition to its patients, with Tenten glaring angrily at the blonde ex-Sunanin. Following them? Temari gestured vaguely towards Sunade and Shizen before tilting her head to the side. Who are you again? Kin snickered, as a sudden twitch appeared in Tenten's right eye. Huh, and here I thought Naruto-sama was the heartbreaker. Sunshine, I never knew. Should I be afraid for my virtue? You can't be afraid of what doesn't exist, Temari said sourly. You humiliated me, and your teammate crippled mine. Tenten growled, even, as her face took on a slightly crimson flush. Well, that does narrow it down. Gaara usually killed people instead of just crippling them, Temari admitted, as she tapped the side of her cheek and thought. Isn't she the girl you wiped the floor with right before Naruto-sama beat me? Kin offered helpfully with an innocent smile on her face. Oh, right. The girl who thought it would be a good idea to use nothing but ranged weapons against a girl from Wind Country who carried around a giant fan on her back. Temari struck her palm with a quick nod of her head. I completely forgot about her. I'm right here, Tenten growled. And I guess that Gaara did mess up that guy with those crazy eyebrows, and he probably did the same to that white-eyed pretty boy. Temari nodded her head thoughtfully. You mean that guy with the crazy eyebrows, and that white-eyed pretty boy? Kin asked, as she pointed towards Rock Lee and Niji Hyuga, who were both sitting on hospital beds, staring at girls. Your brother is the reason Guy begged me to see what I could do to help his students regain their burning springtime of youth? Sunade asked, as she arched her brow, reminding the others of her presence. Sunade-sama. Tenten actually squeaked, as she suddenly realized who was accompanying the kunoichi who had eliminated her from the exam. But what? Why? Know when and where? Kin asked Temari with an all-too innocent smile on her face. I think that's supposed to be here. And now, Temari said dryly. I thought she was supposed to be the slow one. I was trying to make her feel better, Kin said unconvincingly. This is the most confusing situation, Lee spoke up, as he glanced over at Niji. Do you not agree? Niji snorted softly, and shook his head. It just shows what kind of ninja they really are. I think that was supposed to be an insult, Kin noted, as she looked towards Niji, who simply glared back at her. I think he really sucks at insults, Temari noted with a shrug. Alright, you two, you can dissect them another time, Sunade cut in, as she glanced at the two boys. Right now, I have work to do. Do we at least get a lollipop? Kin asked hopefully. Shizen, please get these two out of here before I give them something that'll get the brat upset, Sunade said simply, before leveling a look at the two boys in their beds. As Niji and Lee shifted uncomfortably, Shizen gently pushed Kin and Temari out the door. Of course, Sunade-sama. She paused right before she shut the door behind her. Did you want me to get you a lollipop too? The door shut just in time for the medical clipboard to hit it. Jiraiya wasn't sure which one of the two was more awkward, as they stared at each other with slack-jawed amazement. They stood in contrast to one another, Naruto in his red and black, looking almost dashing if not for the look of a stunned slack jaw. Ino showed that she had the makings of being a beautiful kunoichi in her smooth blue dress, trimmed in gold, if only she learned to keep her emotions in better check. Still, he was wondering if he was going to have to walk over to them both, and rap them on their heads to wake them from their stupor, before Naruto recovered, and offered a hesitant smile. You look really good, Ino. Ino beamed for a moment, and then recovered, as she gave an exaggerated look up and down. You don't look so bad yourself, Naruto-kun. I knew you could clean up nice. He chuckled nervously, as he scratched the back of his head. So we're going to dinner? Well, that's what they said, Ino agreed, before frowning lightly, as she noticed his empty hands. No flowers? There was a slight disappointment in her voice, as grimaced, and quickly responded. Well, no, but I have this? And with that, he almost shoved the slim black jewelry box into Ino's hands. Ino blinked in confusion before she carefully opened it up, and then her eyes widened at the slim bracelet inside. Oh wow. You like it? Naruto asked hopefully. It's lovely, she agreed with a soft smile, as she lightly lifted her wrist up. Help me put it on. Sure, Naruto agreed, fumbling with the clasps for only a moment, before he was able to secure it on Ino's wrist. Jiraiya and, from another position a ways away, Anko watched, as the date progressed. Awkwardness oozed between the two, as they talked about their teammates, their classmates, and what they'd been doing during the time they'd been apart. Dinner was simple and relaxed, though Ino had to help Naruto with picking out something appropriate from the restaurant, as he tried to hide his awkwardness. Still, there was no venomous hatred, no coldness from the restaurant. Jiraiya had made sure of that when he'd made the boys' reservations. In fact, everything had been surprisingly normal and predictable, until Naruto walked into her door. Well, here we are, Ino said, with a small smile on her lips, as she stood with her back to the door. Yeah, Naruto agreed, nodding his head slowly, as he looked back at Ino, suddenly apprehensive, as he watched the way her lips curled back from smile to smirk, and he shifted uncomfortably. It was, not bad? Not bad? Ino repeated, her eyes narrowing, as her smirk became rather fixed upon her face. Well, I've never been on a date before, and I don't really do well, he said with a reflexive scratch on the back of his head before he shrugged his shoulders. Don't really what? Ino said simply, her smile dimming into a slight frown, as she stared at him. I know I always used to want Sakura-chan to go on a date with me. But if that's what a date is, Naruto shrugged helplessly. I think I'd have more fun training with someone than doing a date. Training, Ino repeated, her eyes slowly narrowing into slits. You'd rather be training than on a date with me. On the building nearby, Jiraiya had cradled his forehead in his palm while Anko blinked, then looked on the verge of bursting into laughter. Well, yeah, Naruto agreed with a nod of his head. I mean, with training you're actually doing stuff, instead of just sitting there, eating, or talking. You don't like talking to me? Ino was glaring openly now. Well, it's alright, but wouldn't you rather be doing it while sparring or something? He took a step back lightly at the look she was giving him. Hey, why were you looking at me like that? We just had a date, a nice first date. I don't know why now, but you were actually good company. We had good food, we looked good, we had a good time, she said, stating the words simply, as she stared at him. We get back to my door, and you blow it now. When I wanted my damned goodnight kiss, now you screw it all up. Why were you so angry? Naruto asked her in confusion, staring at her, not quite comprehending what she was saying. You just said you were having a good time, now you're upset? Ino flushed, staring back at him, her eyes starting to glisten slightly. How could you just ruin it all like that? But Naruto frowned in confusion. I just told you that I'd rather be training with you. It was a testament to how completely his guard was down, or maybe how much he trusted her, or simply because he wasn't in combat mode. But he did nothing to stop the sudden gut punch Ino threw into his stomach. Nor was he really ready for the impact, as it made him double over slightly. While he stood there, staring at her with wide eyes, she turned around, and fled into her home, slamming the door behind him, and leaving him holding his stomach in confusion in the middle of the street. From his spot nearby, Inoichi wasn't quite sure how to feel about the turn of events. On one hand, Ino was pissed at the Uzumaki boy. On the other hand, knowing what he did with Naruto, he was fairly certain the boy was simply a combination of clueless and being too damned honest for his own good. It left him more than a little conflicted, as the boy had, in his own way, been trying to compliment his daughter. Though, he had to admit, it wasn't often you got to see Jiraiya beating his head against the wall while Anko watched, and struggled desperately not to explode in laughter. Instead of commenting though, he chose to walk quietly into his home, and silently made his way to Ino's bedroom. It was the quiet sobs that he could hear through the door that resolved the question in his own mind. Naruto had made his daughter cry. No matter how clueless he was, he now had to suffer. It was really as simple as that. Quietly, he brought his hand up, and knocked upon the door. Princess? When he received no answer, and the sobbing continued unabated, he carefully opened up the door. He shut it again when a kunai buried itself an inch from his face in the door frame. He'd work on comforting her in the morning when he didn't have to worry about disarming her. Jiraiya waited, as long as he could before he had appeared before Naruto, his eyes blazing, fury burning like the fires of hell itself, before suddenly he fell to his knees, and raised his hands imploringly at Naruto. How could you do it? How could you utterly botch it like that? It was a sure thing. All you had to do was not be himself? Anko noted dryly as she appeared, still grinning like a loon, and sipping at a saucer of sake. Damn though, when you screw it up, you do it with gusto, brat. Naruto stared at the two of them, his face completely blank, before he turned and kept walking. Anko frowned, as she watched the boy continued his walk. Where do you think you're going, brat? Home, Naruto said simply, his eyes half glazed over, as he steadily put one foot in front of the other. Home? That's it? That's all the response I get when this is the first you've been in my awesome presence after how long? Anko jumped in front of Naruto, arms crossed beneath her pie. I don't think so. Try again, brat. I'm going home, Naruto repeated tiredly, as he tried to sidestep her. I want to go to sleep, and hope that the world makes sense again in the morning. Nah, she said as she grabbed him by the back of his collar, and planted her feet firmly in the street with chakra. You won't escape that easily. Damn it, let me go. Naruto growled, finally showing a bit of emotion, as he glared back at her, and tried to wrench himself out of her grip. What the hell is wrong with you? What the hell is wrong with me? What the hell is wrong with you? Anko snapped back, as she finally stopped smiling, and glared at Naruto. You're just gonna mope about it. What am I supposed to do, huh? Naruto growled back. I told you, she doesn't like me, she likes Sasuke. And I'm not Sasuke. How many times do I have to tell you? Jiraiya growled out. She likes, idiot. Anko cut Jiraiya off, as she smacked him on the back of his head. How do you expect to get anywhere with a girl if that's the kind of attitude you have? He's not, obviously. Jiraiya agreed with a nod of his head. You have to know that you can do it. I mean, how can you keep on going about your Hokage goal, and then just give up on something like this? I know. Anko agreed, not noticing she had dropped Naruto. It's pathetic. And hypocritical. Absolutely. How could he just go back on everything he stands for? Loudmouth brats with brass balls the world over are hanging their heads in shame. Are you just going to stand there and sulk about this? Jiraiya demanded, as he turned his attention back to Naruto, only to blink at the note on the ground where Naruto had been. You two need to pay more attention. Took the brat for therapy. Yugago. P.S. I already sent a shadow clone to the tailor to charge a new outfit for the brat to the super pervert's account to replace this one. Well, that was nice. Wait, my account? Jiraiya demanded in outrage. Hey, not so funny when it's someone else pulling it on you, is it, you old pervert? Anko noted with a smirk. Oh shush, Jiraiya grumbled. Yugago dropped Naruto unceremoniously on the ground. You know why you're here, yes? Damn it, why is everyone so damned crazy? Naruto glared back at Yugago. I'm not even armed. Whose fault is that? Yugago asked simply with a shrug, as she lazily cut a slash across his chest. Fuck, Naruto yelped, as he jumped back, his eyes widening for a moment before glaring back at her. Damn it. It's not my fault the old pervert took away all my gear. It's your fault for letting him, she answered simply with a sage nod of her head. But, this is a brand new outfit, he asked hopefully, a touch of desperation entering his voice. I already sent a clone to the tailor to have a new one made for you, she said simply. I'm not getting out of this, am I? Naruto asked rhetorically. No, you're not, she agreed before lazily working on making him bleed. Again? Kin started, as Naruto was dumped on his bed by Yugago. He was sulking, again, Yugago responded simply. He did better this time though, almost hitting me a couple of times. I actually had to be serious about it. He did a replacement with the door while we were on the mission. When the door was still attached to the wall before he did it, Temari deadpanned. Damn it, I passed up Sasuke for this? He's been training with you the whole time? HM? No, just the last hour or so, Yugago said, as she lightly flicked him on his unconscious nose. Before that he was on a date with Jiraiya-sama, and Anko arranged for him. He was sulking after it imploded, after I expressly informed him that he was not allowed to anymore. He was on a date? Kin repeated, her eyes narrowed into slits. Yes, Yugago responded with a nod before tilting her head to the side. You know, the whole courting thing that a spoiled doesn't get to do anymore, as they only get to have their master in their lives. But, Kin let out a slight keening whine. No fair, damn it. I almost died for him. Do I hear whining? Yugago asked, as she turned her head towards Kin, and gave her a sweet smile. Whining? No whining here. Kin quickly shook her head. Why would I whine? Sounded like whining to me, Temari noted with an innocent tone ruined by the smirk she wore on her lips. I have to agree, Yugago agreed with a nod. And you know what I do with whiners, don't you? But I. Kin protested before she quickly found herself being hauled out the window by the back of her jacket, as she glared at Temari. This is so not fair. I'll get you for this, I swear, sunshine. I think I hear more whining. Temari called back. So do I. Yugago's voice agreed. Temari waited a moment, letting Kin's cursing voice trail off, before she turned to Naruto, and eyed him critically. And damn, it looks like he was actually wearing a decent outfit too. We'll have to see about having him get some more. Nodding her head, she went to work dragging him to the bathroom so she could wash off the blood and dirt that still lingered on his body. Naruto groaned softly, as he woke to what was unfortunately becoming a familiar situation. He was naked again. He was in his bed. And he wasn't the only naked body in it. Damn it, again? He demanded with a groan before blinking, as he could feel his hand on something rather warm and soft. My Naruto-sama, you're finally getting so forward. You will be gentle, won't you? Temari asked, as she smirked back at him. You know what? Naruto looked straight back at Temari, staring into her eyes. Screw it. And he squeezed again, purposely this time. Generally, you want to be a bit gentler with most girls. Not all of them like it that rough, Temari noted, her cheeks pinkening slightly, as she bit back on her lower lip. Wah! Kin's slurred voice spoke up, as she groggily looked up from Naruto's other side before she blinked at the scene in front of her, unable to fully comprehend it. Wait, now, personally Temari's eyes widened, as she suddenly bit back a gasp. Well, yes, that works. Hold it. How come Sunshine is getting it? Kin demanded, as she stared in absolute outrage. Damn it. No fair. I am MPH. Kin tried to glare over the pillow shoved into her face before she blinked, as she found herself pulled over Naruto's lap. She barked off a muffled leap, as she suddenly felt his palms smacking against her rear. Then, she closed her eyes, and grinned slightly, as she felt him finally giving in, and giving her another spanking. It was some time later that Naruto eventually made it into the shower, and from there to his kitchen. Waiting for him, Anko was sitting in a seat, holding a bowl of rice, and taking a bite. When she saw him, she paused for a moment, arching up a brow, and tilting her head to the side. For a moment she studied him, her eyes narrowed just slightly, before she swallowed, and set the bowl back down on the table. So, Yugogo got you again, huh? Anko paused a moment before munching on a bit more rice. I don't suppose it would do any good to hope that she didn't ruin that outfit. Completely, and utterly destroyed, Naruto agreed, perking up slightly with a quick grin. So, you do realize Jiraiya paid for it with your money, right? Anko responded, as she hid her mouth behind her bowl, and continued to lazily eat her breakfast. And no, nothing you can do about it, as it's been completely ruined. Naruto stared at her a moment, jaw hanging, before he groaned, and brought his head down onto the table. Damn it! Can I win at least a little bit? Not until you've earned it, Anko responds simply before pointing her chopsticks at him. For a ninja, you have to go through hell before you can reach heaven, if you survive that long. You're just doing this because it amuses you, Naruto countered back. No, that's just a really nice perk, Anko said cheerfully, as she then gestured towards some miso, rice, and fish. Now eat up. You'll be needing your energy. Do I want to know why? Naruto asked, as he sat down, and pulled over a bowl of rice, and eyed it warmly. And you cook this? Yes, I can cook a simple breakfast, and no, I didn't even poison it. It'd ruin the fun later on, she said cheerfully. And curse of being a ninja, brat. You always want to know, more than you don't. However unpleasant it is, knowing keeps you alive longer than not. There was a pause, as Naruto took a mouthful of rice, and chewed it slowly, a look of concentration on his face, before he looked back at Anko, as he swallowed then spoke. Why then? Well, because your team is going to get introduced to your spoils, of course. Anko started with a broad, shark-like grin on her face. He stared back at her before looking at a bowl of miso, and staring at it contemplatively. No, you can't drown yourself in a bowl of miso that small, she stated simply, as she went back to eating more of her rice. And you can't become Hokage if you die like that. Has anyone ever told you that you're absolutely evil? He stated simply. More than you can possibly imagine, she agreed with a nod, and a smirk. Though you have more valid reasons for it than most of them. Damn it, Ino groaned softly, as she awoke to the stabbing light of the sun streaming brightly through her window. For a moment, she clenched her eyes shut, curling back into her sheets to escape. It was only a moment later when she sighed, and stretched out, as she reluctantly sat up in her bed, and stared vacantly towards the wall. She still hadn't quite escaped the night before. It simply refused to leave her alone. Everything had been going so well. She'd been so close to perfection, so close to a perfect first date, a perfect first kiss. So close, and then it had simply shattered into blades of cold glass. As her knees curled back against her chest, she allowed herself a moment to simply bury her face against them, and feel the trickle of tears left from the night past glistening, and wet her eyes. Then she pulled back, her eyes red, her hair matted and unkempt. Turning, she looked into the mirror atop her nearby dresser, staring at the horrible mess she appeared to be. Then a flash of brilliance caught her eye, and she stared at the simple silver bracelet still adorning her wrist. The bracelet, she was still wearing it. She was still wearing the bracelet Naruto had given her. For a moment she was tempted to simply tear it off, to throw it away. It reminded me of how horribly the date had gone. It was a reminder that he had hurt her worse than she thought he could. But she found she couldn't. Instead, she rolled out of bed, and stood up before she quietly walked towards the dresser. She reached down to the clasp, and touched against the latch, as she involuntarily felt a shiver run down her spine, the phantom touch of Naruto's fingers helping her latch it about her wrist. For a moment she fiddled with it, biting down on her lower lip, before she frowned, and steeled her nerves. She was just going to take it off. It's not like she'd never put it back on again. Quietly assured, she opened the latch, and carefully set it on a carefully cleared space on the dresser, then walked towards the shower. She needed to clear her head. Training wasn't something she could afford to go into with all these thoughts running through her head, especially not with Anko and Yugogo involved. She'd figure out what she was going to do about Naruto later. How are you doing, princess? Inoichi asked carefully, as he watched his daughter walk downstairs, dressed in a simple pair of black combat pants, a sleeveless purple shirt looking roughly like her typical outfit, with a mesh armor running down her to her wrists. Ino looked at her father for a moment, debating how to answer the question, as she recalled the kunai she'd thrown into the door frame she'd had to retrieve after taking her shower, and winced softly. Sorry about the kunai, Daddy. It happens, Inoichi waved away her apology, as he looked at her. I just wanted to make sure you were doing all right. I didn't really feel like talking last night, she said simply, and nodded her head, as she sat down in her seat. Oh, and why's that? Ino's mother spoke up, as she put down a bowl of miso before Ino, next to a matching bowl of rice, and some pickles. I had a date last night, Ino said simply, as she shifted uncomfortably, and stared down into her miso, as her fingers fidgeted about her chopsticks, letting them nervously roll through her fingers. Ino's mother froze in place before slowly looking at Ino with a blank stare, carefully setting her own bowl down with a firm, solid impact. Oh? I hadn't heard that. As Inoichi shrank slightly from the sound of subtle accusation in her voice, Ino shrugged her shoulders a bit. I didn't know I was going on it until yesterday afternoon, and I was too busy getting ready to come tell you. Too busy getting ready, she repeated, as she slowly arched up an elegant, dark brow. And how did you get ready without coming home? Enko-sensei dragged me off for it, and helped me get ready for it. I was in boutiques and salons until I went on the actual date, Ino answered, fighting down the urge to flinch beneath her mother's accusing glare. I was completely busy until I got home. And why didn't you tell me about it when you got home then? Ino fidgeted again, and looked away at her chopsticks, pausing, as she clenched her fingers tightly about them. I didn't want to talk to anyone after it. She threw a kunai at me when I tried to check on her, Inoichi agreed in his daughter's defense. He immediately regretted it when his wife turned her attention onto him, and carefully arched a brow at him. Oh? So you knew about this? Inoichi froze for a moment, and then shrugged helplessly back at his wife. Well, I might possibly have gotten a bit of information on it from work I thought she'd tell you, and I only really saw the end of it. And you didn't come get me? He winced again, glancing towards Ino for support, only to see she was glaring at him, as well. You were watching us? Well, I might have happened to catch a peek or two, he answered, hedging, and shrank slightly from the looks. What? She didn't give me a chance to give him a proper speech. Who was it? Ino's mother cut in. Shikamaru? Chuji? Maybe the Aburain boy, very polite. No, and no. Ino shook her head quickly. It wasn't that Sasuke boy? She asked, her tone as flat as her eyes as she just looked at her daughter. No, it wasn't Sasuke. Ino agreed with a blush on her face, and a light glare. It was with Naruto, and he completely ruined it. There was a pause, as Ino watched her mother digest those words before she paused a moment, then visibly fought down the urge to groan, and palm her face. As she closed her eyes, tilted her head back, and took a slow, deep breath, before she spoke. What did you do, Ino? Me? She stared at her mother, her mouth hanging open, before she stood up, slamming her hands down on the table. What did I do? It was a great date. It was practically perfect until he ruined it. And how did he ruin it? She asked simply, arching a brow, her tone neither accusatory nor commiserating. Ino flushed again, tears lightly glistening in her eyes again. He told me he'd rather be training with me than going on a date with me. Ino watched, as her mother very slowly brought her bowl of miso up to her lips, carefully, elegantly took a sip, and then set it down onto the table before her. And you took that as an insult? How is that not an insult? Ino demanded, as she stared back at her mother, mouth hanging agati. It is the opposite of romantic. Uzumaki-san's parents' first date involved the utter decimation of 2 squads of Kumonin. Ino's mother said with a quiet force of silk-covered steel, as she lifted up her bowl, and began to slowly inspect it, as if searching out any visible flaw. Their second involved the near-complete destruction of a training ground. Their third involved them practically tearing each other's clothing apart at the end of a spar, and rutting like animals then and there. I'd almost forgotten that, Inoichi admitted wistfully, as he looked off into the distance. Naruto's mother, like her son, wasn't exactly known for her subtlety. Indeed, his wife agreed with a slight smile over the bowl. She was a very passionate woman. A shame they didn't live to raise him. As far as he's come without them, imagine how far it would be if he had them. But Ino stared at her mother, mouth hanging slightly, disbelief written across her features. You did know he's an orphan, didn't you, Ino? Her mother asked patiently before she took a slow sip of her miso. Yes? I mean, I knew he lived on his own, Ino admitted, as she shifted uncomfortably. His parents died the day he was born, she agreed, as she quietly set the bowl back down on the table with a soft, purposeful click. They died together. If it wasn't so tragic, it would almost be romantic. But because of it, and because of certain circumstances, he was forced to primarily raise himself. But how can Ino stumbled over her words, as she struggled to make sense of what her mother was telling her, against her own notions of how things were supposed to be. Does he like to train? Her mother asked suddenly. Spend all his free time doing it? Slowly, Ino nodded her head, confusion on her face, as she looked questioningly back at her mother. Yes? Her mother smiled an odd, nostalgic smile she knew she'd seen before, but she couldn't quite place. Before she took another soft sip, and then looked out the window. His father was like that. He always had to push himself harder, further, higher than anyone else. She then turned her head, and looked back at her daughter. Something so important to him, almost vital, wouldn't you say, Ino-chan? And he said he'd rather you were taking part in it with him than on a date. Inoichi made the connection first, looking, for a moment, as if he were on the verge of breaking down into tears, as the realization hit him. His daughter took a moment longer, her eyes blinking owlishly back at her mother. Then she collapsed back into her seat, and groaned softly, as she brought her forehead to the table. I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot, Ino repeated, as she struck her head against the table. Ino-chan? Her mother spoke up in a calm, sweet tone. Yes? Ino paused, and looked up. I would suggest an apology instead. She sipped her miso again before cutting her off with a thin smile. After breakfast, Ino's shoulders slumped, and she nodded her head. Yes, mother. Inoichi looked like he wanted to pick up where Ino left off, but one look from the corner of his wife's eye was enough warning for him to behave. Unspoken was the or else in that look. One he'd been married long enough to know he didn't want to find out what that or else was. Sakura watched Sasuke warily from the corner of her eye, as she fidgeted nervously where she sat on a stump, knees pressed tightly together. Everything was just so her whole world was turned upside down. Nothing really made sense anymore, not since the invasion. And now she was sitting here, waiting on her team again. It was just like they had before everything had changed. A part of her even hoped that nothing had really changed. Only she already knew that wasn't true. She could see Sasuke was agitated. He looked almost angry, as he shifted about, his eyes darting not towards where Kakashi usually appeared, as they would before the invasion. Instead he kept looking towards where Naruto usually appeared in those times that she beat him here. That was another thing that didn't match up anymore. Normally, Naruto would have been here around the same time as Sasuke, or sometimes even before him. Only he wasn't here yet, and she couldn't find out what happened on his and Ino's date until he did. Finally she couldn't take it anymore. The nervous energy bubbling up inside of her needed a release. Standing up, she quietly walked towards the makeshift kunai and shuriken range, with posts wrapped in frayed and weathered rope waiting downrange. Reaching into her holster, she took a moment to orient herself, taking a deep breath, before in one fluid movement her finger hooked the ring of a kunai. Her arm rose, her wrist flicked, and the weapon was released. Thanks. Another, then another. The weapons clustering together, each around the first. Each counted out, each measured and exact. The aim wasn't perfect, but it was better than she had a few weeks ago. This time, she wasn't reaching for weapons she didn't have. Instead, when the last kunai had left her finger, she was almost already walking down range to retrieve them. Each blade was checked over quickly, efficiently, before it was slid back into its place in its holster. She walked back down the range, taking up a position 10 feet further from the target. Then she turned and, with another deep breath, began to throw them again. Thanks, 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 thunk thunk. She froze for a moment when she saw a kunai embedded in another one of the posts on the range. For a moment, her eyes flicked to the side. She could see Sasuke, scowling lightened slightly, as he released his kunai much the same as she had before. Breathing out a soft sigh of relief, she allowed a slight smile to curl over her lips, as she resumed her earlier rhythm, launching the kunai down range with a firm thunk. Sasuke wasn't sure why she'd moved to the range after watching Sakura's first round of throws. The routine wasn't something terribly new, she'd done it herself dozens and dozens of times. Repetition hardwiring the motions into her mind and body, each flick sharp, precise. For a moment her mind flashed back to Itachi, watching her brother manipulate the kunai with precisely timed throws that reached targets beyond a direct throw. A skill she still hadn't mastered herself. A flash of irritation sent her kunai half an inch off from where she'd intended, causing it to click dangerously against the previous kunai. She immediately scowled. It certainly looked impressive, only she knew it was luck instead of skill. Her next throw struck deep, burying itself into the wood, as she bit back a growl. Now she'd have to pry the kunai out. Then she'd have to make sure it hadn't been damaged, and then, so serious, Sasuke, Kakashi's voice cut in, as he appeared behind the pair. It's good to see you both practicing so diligently. But you are just out of the hospital. Take it easy for a day or so. Sasuke bit down her response, as she turned her head, glaring back at her sensei, as she squared her shoulders, and pointedly threw another kunai down the range. Seeing that he wasn't getting a response, Kakashi turned his head towards Sakura, and looked down at the field. Nice grouping, Sakura. Where'd you learn that fast draw technique? A flash of irritation splashed across Sakura's eyes, as she glared at her instructor for a moment before stuffing it back down. I've been working with Marino-san and Yamanaka-san at TI. Kakashi blinked, then blinked again, as he stared at Sakura, and then his shoulders slumped. Ma, are all my precious little students going to be stolen from me? You've got no one to blame for it but yourself, Anko's smirking voice cut in, as she appeared in a swirl of leaves. Really, Anko-chan, how could you wound me like that? Kakashi paused a moment before perking up brightly. Oh, right, because it's the only way you can. This time it was Anko's turn to glare at the man, who merely smiled happily back at her. Just for that, you get to do the introductions. Introductions? Kakashi repeated, blinking slightly, and his eyes widened quickly. Already? Yup, better to get it over with, Anko agreed with a cheerful nod of her head. Where's Jiraiya-sama? Kakashi asked, as he slowly glanced around, trying to locate the infamous pervert. Sleeping off drinking with Sunade-sama, Shizen spoke cheerfully, as she stepped into view, smiling at Sasuke and Sakura, and bowing lightly to them. Ah, you must be Naruto-kun's teammate. A pleasure to meet you. I'm Shizen. No hello for me, Shizen-chan? Kakashi asked with a mock pout, as he looked at the woman. Kakashi-san, I could, but then they'd start wondering about why I called you Kashi-chan, and then I'd have to break out the pictures. You remember those pictures, don't you? She smiled beautifully at him. And moving on, Kakashi said without skipping a beat. Where are they then? Yugugo's bringing em, Anko said simply, as she shrugged her shoulders before arching a brow at Sakura, who immediately flushed, and refused to meet her eyes. Oh, come on, cherry girl, you're not still upset about that, are you? You got valuable experience from it. Sakura muttered something incomprehensible under her breath, her face flushed. What did you do this time, Sakura? Sasuke asked with a sigh on her lips, and she sent a slight glare at her teammate. Sakura flushed darker, and almost glared back at Sasuke, her lips tightening, as her fingers clenched, but she refused to answer. I goaded her into fighting my own cute little student, Anko said brightly smiling, as she grinned toothily at them. And she learned some valuable lessons from it, and got an extra pair of teachers out of it. You don't have a student, Anko, Kakashi pointed out. Anko pulled out a piece of paper, and stuck it in Kakashi's face. Yes, I do. He blinked, scanned the paper quickly, then palmed his face. Right, I stand corrected. You do have a student. Does no one stay with their original instructors anymore? Your Uchiha doesn't have a different sensei? Anko offered blandly before shrugging her shoulders slightly, and waving towards Shizen. Hey Azun-chan. Anko-chan, Shizen agreed with a soft smile on her face, and a bow. This feels so nostalgic. Yeah, only one missing, Anko agreed before her voice trailed off, and she sighed softly, and shook her head. Well, there's a buzzkill. True, Shizen agreed with a sad smile of her own. Would you go with me to pay respects? Sure, it's about time I went again myself, Anko agreed with a nod. Wonderful, Shizen clapped her hands together once. I'm sure he'll be happy to know we're still thinking about him. Sakura bit her lip, and looked curiously over at her sensei, only to blink at the sad, somber expression he wore on his face. Kakashi-sensei? Instantly the melancholy vanished into a cheerful smile, as he ruffled her hair. Something the matter, Sakura-chan? Then she paused, trying to think of the right words. She wants to know who they're talking about, Sasuke stated simply, shrugging at the light glare Sakura sent at her. What? You know I'm right. Ah, Kakashi nodded, as his smile became fixed. Ah, they're talking about the third apprentice, or I suppose it would be more appropriate to call him the first. Apprentice? Sakura repeated, confusion only growing on her face. Of the Sannin, Kakashi finished for her, as he glanced over at where Anko and Shizen were quietly talking to one another, an occasional giggle, and a look directed at him forcing him to ignore the tremor of dread it sent down his spine. Shizen-chan is apprenticed to Sunade-sama. Anko was apprenticed to him, and paused, his eyes flicking to Sasuke for a moment, the snake before he turned traitor. Which leaves the fourth Hokage, Sakura finished, staring up at him with wide eyes, before turning those eyes onto Anko and Shizen in disbelief. Yeah. Damn, was he hot, Anko agreed, as she glanced over at Shizen and smirked. Did you ever see him without his shirt on? Now, Anko-chan, that's highly inappropriate. I'd never have done something so foolish, Shizen stated, as she lifted her nose into the air before breaking into a slight smirk. Not without making sure she wasn't in the country first. Hell, I was just a perverted brat, so she didn't mind, Anko noted with a chuckle. Though I think she was starting to get tired of me accidentally picking the wrong side of the hot springs. You were such a pervert, Shizen noted with a nod of her head in agreement. Where? Anko half demanded with amused, lidded eyes. Now Kakashi spoke up, waving his hands quietly. You two can talk about which one of Jiraiya-sama's Ika scenes is your favorite later. He paused before smiling happily at them. Once I have time to get a notebook. You are such a pervert, Kakashi-sensei, Sakura stated simply, as she blushed and looked away. Pot kettle, Anko said simply with a smirk. Shizen glanced at where Sasuke was pinching her nose in irritation, and smiled cheerfully at her. Yes, we do have to be this crazy. No one in their right mind will ever become a powerful ninja. At Sasuke's confused look, she winked at her. Anyone in their right mind would finish the academy, decline entering the ninja ranks, and instead just use their skills to keep in great shape, and get laid. Perverts, all of you, perverts, Sasuke muttered, as she reached up, rubbing at the base of her neck, as she felt the twinge of the seal pulsing beneath her skin. We'll get you soon, my little pretty, Anko responded, rubbing her fingers together, and leering hungrily at Sasuke, who immediately took an instinctive step backwards, a blush on her face. With silk, and lace, and some nice shibari, fufufufu. Anko-chan, restraint, please, Shizen admonished lightly. You need to wait at least 2 weeks before you're allowed to inflict any further psychological trauma of that level. Upon Sasuke-sen here. Medic's orders. Anko gave an exaggerated pout before sighing softly, and grumbling. Fine. I still need to get them ready for the introductions, Kakashi stated simply, as he cut in. Introductions? Shizen promptly tilted her head to the side. To Sunshine, and Bitch-chan. Anko agreed with a nod of her head, and a toothy grin. They don't know? Shizen paused a moment before looking at Anko. Do you still keep emergency sake? Wordlessly, Anko pulled out a scroll, and waved it helpfully in the air. Right, well, I suppose we should get comfortable for this show, Shizen noted, as she settled down on a weathered, sanded stump at just the right height for a bench. I want to see how proper preparation is done for something like this. Anko unrolled the scroll, then cut her thumb on her teeth, and spread a smear of blood along the paper inside. A quiet puff of smoke, and a trio of ceramic sake bottles appeared. Deftly, she caught the first two, one in each hand, while Shizen almost delicately captured the third, and settled back, as Anko took a seat next to her. I don't suppose it would do any good to ask you to at least pretend you're not finding me to be a source of amusement, Kakashi asked hopefully. Now, really, Kakashi-san, would I do something like that? Shizen arched her brow, as she slowly rolled the bottle around her fingers, taking pleasure in the discomfort and social awkwardness of the great genius of our generation. If I answer that question honestly, you'll start sharing those pictures, won't you? Kakashi noted blandly with a grimace. Shizen arched her brow, and tilted her head to the side. Well, I was going to just ask Jiraiya-sama to give you some refresher training, but I will consider the merits of your proposition. And moving on, Kakashi said simply before turning his attention to Sakura and Sasuke. I'm sure I don't need to remind you both about what happened during the third stage of the exams. Immediately both Sakura and Sasuke stiffened. The pink-haired girl's face turned slightly to the side, averting from her instructor's gaze. Sasuke merely narrowed her eyes slightly, and waited for him to continue. Well, it could have potentially been worse, if it wasn't for Naruto, Kakashi said carefully. Much, much worse. Yes, the idiot stopped Gaara, Sasuke said irritably, as she glared back at Kakashi. I already know this. I'm not referring to what happened during the third stage, he corrected with a shake of his head. I'm referring to what occurred immediately after the second stage. Because of Naruto, we were actually aware of the invasion coming. He uncovered critical information. Naruto uncovered critical information? Sakura repeated dully, as she stared back at Kakashi. Naruto did. Our Naruto. Yes, he agreed with a nod. Our Naruto. How the hell did the idiot do that? Sasuke demanded, as she glared back at him. And if we knew it was coming, why didn't we know? If they'd known my parents... Anger started to spark behind Sakura's eyes, as she stared accusingly at Kakashi. Because it was classified, Sakura, Kakashi said simply, as he affixed her with a look. No one outside of ANBU below the rank of was given explicit information about what was going on. Not even that we deployed in preparation. The risk was too high. Then why did we even have the third stage? Why didn't we just cancel, and keep everyone away, and safe? She demanded, as her eyes began to stare wildly, desperately, up at Kakashi. Because we couldn't afford to lose face like that, Sasuke answered her, as she looked directly at Kakashi. Because if we didn't, they'd just hide, get stronger, and attack when we didn't know they were coming. And we wanted to have Suna over a barrel, Anko added helpfully. Thank you for your help, Anko, he said flatly, and shook his head, as he looked back at Sakura. This is what it means to live in a hidden village, Sakura. Your parents understood the risk of living here. Generally, a hideout is safe from the kind of threats that villages without an armed force suffer, but they are at times under attack from other villages like them. Sakura took a slow, deep breath before grudgingly nodding her head. What does Naruto of all people discovering the invasion have to do with introductions? Well, Kakashi paused there for a moment, reaching up, and rubbing the back of his neck. You see, do you remember the preliminaries after the second stage? What about them? Sakura's eyes narrowed dangerously at the sheepish look on Kakashi's face. Do you remember who Naruto faced? He prompted helpfully. That hidden sound girl whose team tried to kill us, Sakura said slowly, staring at Kakashi in confusion. There was a moment of silence, as the words sunk in before Sasuke demanded. How the hell did the idiot get her to say anything? 1. He isn't an idiot, a new voice cut in, and 2. He spanked it out of me. Anko's grin threatened to split her face entirely, as she watched a resigned-looking Naruto follow a masked kin with Temari at his side, and Yugo's sword sheath poking at his back. Sakura blinked a moment before her eyes narrowed into furious slits. Next to her, Sasuke's eyes narrowed in a similar manner, while her fingers clenched back into her palms. You! Sakura hissed angrily, as her fingers reflexively slipped to her kunai pack, and managed to hook a finger into one of the rings before Kakashi's hand caught her wrist. Sakura, she's not an enemy, Kakashi said with a quiet firmness. She tried to kill us, Sakura insisted angrily, her eyes never leaving Kin. I was following orders. It wasn't really anything personal, Kin answered back with a shrug of her shoulders, and a bored tilt of her head. Besides, you lived. Rejoice, and all that. Kin-chan, behave, Naruto said with a soft firmness, as he gave her a look. Yes, Naruto-sama, she responded with a sigh, as she crossed her arms almost petulantly across her chest. You know that's not going to last, Temari noted with a smirk upon her lips. That's what spankings are for, Naruto said with a slight frown of resignation. Naruto-sama? Sakura repeated, staring incredulously at the trio before the rest of the words caught up in her mind. Wait, spankings? Naruto! You pervert! Hey! She's a pervert. She'll only behave if I spank her. Naruto protested angrily. Yes, but you did grope me too, Temari noted helpfully, smiling wickedly over Sakura and Sasuke. And it was so forceful. Naruto sent a look of pure betrayal at Temari, who grinned unrepentantly back at him. Goddamn, Sunshine, are you trying to get us all killed? Now, Naruto-kun. It's perfectly natural and healthy for a growing boy to experience sexual urges, Shizen noted cheerfully before tapping her lower lip thoughtfully. You are remembering to use protection, aren't you? While I'm sure the world will whimper in terror at the thought of the resurgence of the Uzumaki, I think you might want to wait a few more years before you start. That way the girls can maximize production. Kin and Temari stared at Shizen with horror in their eyes, as Naruto blushed a bright crimson while he tried to bury his face in his hands. Never mind, I think I'd rather them kill me now. Sasuke was staring, no, actually glaring at Naruto, as she clenched her jaw, and slowly worked her fingers from fists to splay out, itching towards her own kunai holster before clenching again. Naruto, please tell me you were stupid enough to take those two, as spoils. Pausing, Sakura mouthed the word spoils in confusion, as she stared back at her crush with her brow furrowed in confusion. What? Don't they teach kids anything these days? Yugo asked in irritation, as she crossed her arms about her chest. Yes, please, let's tell a group of newly hormonal adolescents about how there is a law that enables them to claim enemy combatants as property, Kakashi said sarcastically, as he gave Yugo a withering look that actually made the woman flinch slightly. You can be the one to deal with all the paperwork. I didn't take them, as spoils, Naruto grumbled softly, and he jerked a thumb at Kin. I took her as a spoil instead of executing her. Old man Hokage made me take Sunshine. And aren't you glad he did? Temari asked with a smirk, as she put her hand on her hip, and cocked it slightly to the side. No, not really, Naruto stated simply. And Naruto-sama isn't stupid, Kin added, as she crossed her arms about her chest, thick-headed, yes. Stubborn beyond all comprehension, yes, but not stupid. He, Sakura began before Temari cut her off, has mastered multiple A-rank techniques, Temari noted with a vague shrug of her shoulders, most of which are pure manipulation of chakra. Multiple? Kakashi blinked a moment, then eyed Naruto carefully. As in more than the two you already had? Naruto suddenly grinned brightly, held up his hand, and produced a swirling Rasengan. Yeah. The pervy sage taught me this. Naruto, when did he start teaching you that? Kakashi asked neutrally, as he watched his student carefully. When we went looking for Granny, Naruto answered with a shrug while Shizen snorted softly in amusement. Kakashi paused for a moment, as he processed Naruto's statement, before looking questioningly towards Shizen, who simply nodded her head, her eyes twinkling, and her lips threatening to break into mirthful laughter. Naruto is the Granny you're referring to, Sunade-sama? Yup. Naruto agreed cheerfully before blinking slightly back at Kakashi. Who else would it be? Naruto. Sakura stared at him, looking absolutely scandalized. You don't refer to someone like the Hokage as Granny. Why not? I called the old man all the time. Naruto looked confused before shrugging his shoulders a bit. As Sakura gaped at Naruto, Kakashi spoke up again with a very careful voice. Naruto, did you learn the Rasengan in just a few weeks? About a week, why? Naruto tilted his head to the side in confusion, his brow furrowed. Then I moved on, and worked on getting my claws better. Your claws? Sasuke repeated, staring dully at him. Yup. Naruto agreed, grinning broadly, as he stepped over to a nearby tree and, with a swipe of his hand, first smooth gouges were rented into the trunk. Aren't they awesome? Sasuke stared for a moment, as she struggled to comprehend exactly what Naruto was so casually displaying. Then she looked away, scowling softly, as she growled just a bit, and then looked back at him. Glaring angrily, she spat, "Fight me." That made everyone in the area blink in surprise before Sakura quickly spoke up, "Sasuke-kun, you just got out of the hospital. You shouldn't be fighting yet." "I'm fine," she hissed angrily, as she glared at Sakura before turning towards Naruto. "Well, idiot? You going to accept, or you going to?" "There will not be a fight," Kakashi cuts in sharply. As Sakura said, "You just left the hospital. You're in no condition to be jumping into a fight right now. Not to mention Naruto-sama would totally kick your ass," Kin added in with a smirk on her lips. "There's no way Sasuke would lose to Naruto," Sakura shot back, glaring at Kin. "Right," Temari drawled out. "I mean, it's not like our master here has beaten a rampaging that took a Kage to stop previously, one that your precious Sasuke-kun couldn't stop. And it's not like he's got ridiculously powerful techniques, nor like he's not got his own original, likely to be classified as a forbidden technique." "I do?" Naruto cut in with a look of confusion on his face. "What you used on the guy who hurt Bitch-chan," she answered, gesturing vaguely towards Kin. "Oh, that," Naruto nodded slightly, as he blushed just a bit. "Wait, don't like to use fire techniques?" Kin recalled before perking up, rubbing her hands together. "Oh yeah? Never mind, bring on the fight." "No!" Shizen cut in, her eyes suddenly hard. "There will be no fight. We will not be putting the Uchiha back in the hospital, and Naruto-kun still needs practice with that particular technique before he can even think about using it in a spar." Anko and Kakashi both blinked at the vehement response from the previously collected woman before Anko glanced at Naruto for a moment, then looking back at Shizen. "The brat's got a technique that is dangerous? I've seen the results of it used on someone," Shizen stated flatly, as she shook her head. "At least with it there's a chance to heal the damage, even if it's remote. With that technique, I wouldn't use that on Sasuke," Naruto protested before grunting softly. "Even if he is a bastard, and asking for it." "Yeah, right, like he has something that dangerous," Sasuke said with a snort, as she crossed her arms about her chest. "Excuse me, Uchiha-chan," Shizen said with a venomously sweet voice, "but when did you become a fully qualified trauma expert?" She paused before lightly tapping her lower lip. "Oh, that's right, you didn't. So, please do tell me, Uchiha-chan, what qualifications do you have for judging the destructive potential for a technique you haven't even had described to you, let alone seen in person?" "Shizen-chan," Kakashi said gently, as Sasuke flushed a brilliant crimson, "I'd appreciate it if you didn't berate my genin quite so much." He paused, as he then tilted his head to the side, as he gave Sasuke a look. "Even if my student was improperly addressing a seasoned, and the apprentice of our new Hokage, and should apologize, I apologize, Shizen-san. I will remember to be more careful with my choice of words in the future." Sasuke started with a coolly schooled face, as she struggled to not clench her fingers back into her fist. "It would be best if you did, Uchiha-san," Shizen said simply, as she looked back at her. "And it would be best if you remembered that what you see on the surface hides what lurks in the depths unseen." "I thank you for the reminder, Shizen-san," again, tightly controlled, and crisp words. Enough of all that. After all this time it's time we should have some nice relaxing team training." Kakashi spoke up cheerfully. "I can help," Anko offered cheerfully, her eyes shining. "So can Yugogo-chan." Kakashi paused for a moment, glancing at his team, and Naruto's spoils. What the hell, why not? Damn it, Sasuke groaned softly, as she leaned back the tree, her whole body aching from the training session her team had been through earlier. The training she'd done with Kakashi before the third stage hadn't been anywhere near this bad. It was like every little movement she made was making muscles she didn't know she had whimpered in protest. She'd had to spend hours avoiding live kunai and blades along with her team. At first, it had been a challenge. The blades had been hard, but not impossible to dodge. A few minutes of it had been a nice warm-up. Surprisingly, even Sakura had been able to keep up. But Naruto had just looked suspicious, wary, like things were going too well. After the warm-up, she found out why when suddenly she wasn't cleanly dodging everything anymore. Suddenly it had stopped being fun, and turned into an almost desperate dance to just survive. Both she and Sakura were bloody, and sweating in short order, and while they were struggling with the wave of kunai, and flashes of sword slashes, Naruto had grabbed the thrown weapons, and used them to deflect the incoming attacks, and threw them in whatever way he could. She'd started mimicking him in short order, and even Sakura had made the attempt, to the four Jounin's nods of approval. But eventually, first Sakura, and then, as much as she hated to admit it, she herself had faltered. Then Naruto stepped in front of them, and suddenly nothing came close to them. The kunai only came for a short burst, a small swarm testing out the sudden defense, and quickly flowed around them like water, leaving them untouched. Naruto had protected them. She'd been weak, and Naruto, had stepped in to protect her. After everything that had happened, she couldn't even keep up with the dead last. She couldn't be weak, she wouldn't. She needed to be stronger. She needed power. And then, suddenly, 4 figures descended from the sky, and she found herself staring at the smirking faces of 4 slightly older teens. Who the hell are you? What? Naruto stared dumbly at the green flak vest on his hands, as he stared back across the Hokage's desk at Sunade. Are you really going to make me repeat myself, brat? Sunade demanded, as she lightly glared back at him. After Kakashi had called a break in training, with Sasuke and Sakura both practically collapsing in exhaustion after Anko and Yugo's practice session, a messenger hawk had arrived. Kakashi had taken a quick glance through it before calling an early end to training, and dismissing Naruto's teammates to recover. Anko, who'd snuck a look at the message, had smirked, and elbowed Yugo in the ribs lightly, and whispered into her ear. While Naruto had been looking cluelessly back at Kakashi, his squad sensei had informed him that they'd been summoned to the Hokage's tower. With Shizen, Anko, and Yugo tagging along, Naruto, Kin, and Temari had followed Kakashi. Naruto had been left cluelessly wondering what was going on, as Kakashi had remained tight-lipped about the reason behind the summons. Then almost, as soon as he was through the door, Sunade had thrown the vest at him with a smirk, and a single word, congratulations. Now, Naruto looked from the vest back to her, an incomprehension written on his face. What? This is like Iruka-sensei's. It's a vest, brat. You know, to wear? Anko offered with a smirk. You did still want to be a, didn't you? I passed? Naruto stared, jaw hanging, as he looked to Kakashi for comprehension, as a snort came from the window. Of course you passed, you knucklehead, Jiraiya spoke up. After all that work you put in, everything you did, what do you think she's giving you a vest for? Wow, Naruto stared in disbelief at the vest. I didn't really think I'd pass the first time. Oh? Naruto, doubting himself suddenly? How uncharacteristic, Kakashi noted, as he playfully ruffled Naruto's hair. Nay, I knew I'd get it eventually, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said with a huff, and a light glare at him before looking back at the vest with no small amount of awe. I just didn't think I'd get it the first time. Well, you earned it, Temari stated simply with a slight look of envy on her face. You played me. You humiliated me, she leaned in, and breathed into his ear loud enough for everyone to hear. You dominated him. He dominated me first. Kin spoke up quickly with a slight huff, as she glared back at Temari while she wrapped her arms about his arm. Sunade palmed her face with a groan while Shizen hid her face behind her sleeve to mask her smile, and Anko smirked broadly. From the window a perverted giggle could be heard, as Jiraiya scribbled away in his notebook, or at least he did until an empty sake bottle hit his head, and knocked him out of the window. Now for the next vital step, Yugo announced solemnly, as Naruto sent her a curious look. Updating your wardrobe. There's no way you're allowed to wear that vest with that outfit. Naruto blinked for a moment, then felt Kin and Temari tightening their grips upon his arms while the various females around him all smirked predatorily down at him. And that's my cue. See you later, Naruto, Kakashi said before vanishing in a swirl of leaves, leaving Naruto to his fate. Ino frowned softly, as she sat behind the counter of her mother's flower shop, staring off into the distance, frowning slightly, as she ran over her mother's words. She really had been such an idiot, and she hadn't been able to find Naruto when she went looking for him earlier. She realized halfway through her search that she didn't even know where Team 7's usual training ground was. After almost aimlessly wandering through a random selection of training grounds, she'd managed to come across Guy-sensei. It took her a moment to overcome the sheer force of personality that they held before she'd been able to ask him which training ground Team 7 used. She'd eventually managed to decipher where he was directing her after several rants, and repeatedly declining his offer of aid. When she'd arrived, while the training ground showed signs of recent use, it was empty. She'd somehow managed to just miss them. This brought her to moping sadly in the flower shop in a funk of depression, feeling like a complete idiot, and worrying about Naruto ever forgiving her. You know, you better not let Yugo-chan catch you sulking like that. Anko's voice broke through her thoughts. At least not in any clothes you want to keep. Ino let out a soft exclamation, as she saw her temporary sensei standing in front of her wearing a triumphant grin. You, me what, my cute little student? Anko prompted, her brows waggling happily. Yes, Anko-sensei? Ino asked with a resigned sigh. Well, if you don't want to help us pick out the brat's new wardrobe, I can leave you here, Anko noted with a pause, before tapping her lower lip in thought. You're not still sulking about last night, are you? You know where he is? Ino's mouth dropped for a moment, before cursing softly. Of course you know where he is. I spent all morning trying to find him, but you knew where to find him the whole time, didn't you? Of course I did. I am me, after all, Anko agreed with a smirk on her face. And you were watching me utterly screw up last night, weren't you? Ino stated, as her shoulders slumped. So was the old pervert, Anko added with a chuckle, as she shrugged her shoulders. Don't worry about it. It wasn't just your fault. Brat's just clueless. Yeah, but I should have known that, Ino argued back with a quiet grumble. I'm the one who's supposed to know how the mind works. Well, you're still young. Screwing it up is a great way to learn to pay more attention, Anko noted, and shrugged her shoulders. And this time, your screw-up didn't kill someone, just embarrassed the shit out of you. So save the depression for when your screw-up ends up getting someone killed. When? Ino repeated, staring back at Anko. The higher you get in rank, the more likely it becomes to happen, Anko stated simply, sobering quietly. It sucks, and when it happens, you'll either learn to deal with it, and move on, or you'll break. Ino shuddered quietly at the matter-of-fact tone in Anko's voice. She didn't need to ask to know that Anko was speaking from personal experience. Then she nodded her head. So, Naruto, and new clothes? Yup. Why, I'm pretty sure if you play your cards right, you could even get him down to a nice, tight pair of shorts, and nothing else, Anko agreed, smirking, as she watched the way Ino's face flushed bright red, and she averted her eyes. So, coming? Just a second, Ino said, as she quickly ran inside, and up to her room. A moment later, she came back down, silver bracelet again on her wrist. Okay, ready. Told my mom I need to head out. Heh, excellent, Anko agreed, as she made no comment about the bracelet, letting her smirk speak for her. Now onwards. No, Kin said flatly, her arms again crossed about her chest, as she gave Naruto a look where he was holding up a jumpsuit. Not just no, but dear gods in heaven, ever merciful, and generous, and oh, but Gai-sensei, and Lee wear them, Naruto protested. All the more reason for a no then, Temari pointed out with a shake of her head. But Naruto started to say it before Ino's voice cut in. I'm pretty sure they were being clear about it, Ino noted, as she stepped up. Besides, don't you want something that matches your new vest? Naruto immediately stiffened up before slowly turning to face her. Ino, Naruto, she answered back with a nod of her head. They settled into an uncomfortable silence, just staring at each other for several long moments, before Temari rolled her eyes, and spoke up. Oh, will you two just stop standing there, and make up already? Make up or make out? Anko added playfully, her eyes dancing. Knowing my luck both, Kin said with a mutter. Ino looked at Kin for a moment before shrugging her shoulders, suddenly grabbing Naruto by the back of his head, and pulling him down into a kiss. For a moment, Naruto's eyes widened before closing his eyes, and tentatively wrapping his arms about her waist, and pulling her close. As they pressed more tightly together, they were allowed a moment of silence, before Kin's voice interrupted. You know, that wasn't an invitation, damn it? Kin whined softly, as she glared at the two of them. I'm sorry, Ino said softly, as she kissed his lower lip lightly. I for? Naruto asked, confusion written on his face, as his face flushed bright crimson. Ruining things at the end of the date, so we didn't do that last night. She paused a moment before giving him a look, and clenched her fingers tightly at the back of his hair. Just don't get used to it, okay? He agreed again, as he stared back at her in confusion. Good. Now let's get you looking good. Gag me, please, Kin muttered softly. How about with your panties so they stop getting in a bunch? Temari asked helpfully. How about less bitching, and more getting him looking good before I tie you both up, gag you, and do it all myself? Ino cut in, as she gave both of them a look over her shoulder, and arched a brow, glaring at them even though they both stood several inches taller than her. Damn it, she's serious, isn't she? Kin asked, as she looked at Temari. Yes, I think she is, Temari agreed with a nod, before pulling over a shirt from a nearby rack. How about we start with this? Good girl, Ino said with a smirk, as Naruto felt a sinking realization that his life had just taken a turn for the troublesome. Sasuke stared dully back at the gates of Konoha, as she curled one knee back up against her chest, and rested her arms to stop it. As she stared, her mind drifted back to earlier, when she met the Sound 4, and been informed about the price of the seal Orochimaru had placed on her. Power. In exchange for everything else. Her home, her team, her loyalty, her freedom. Everything in exchange for the gift of power to defeat Itachi. Power that didn't cost her hands to be covered in Naru in a friend's blood. Power. That was what she wanted. That was what she needed. Wasn't it? Don't live your life for revenge. It will only destroy you in the end. Stay with your friends, your comrades. Vengeance isn't worth what it will cost you. Kakashi's words echoed through her mind, making her whole body tremble. Anger, guilt, pulsing acidic and venomous through her veins. Who was he to lecture her? Who was he to claim he understood what was important to her? All the people that mattered to me like that are already dead. They weren't his family. They weren't his clan. They weren't watching him. They weren't waiting for him to avenge them. She could feel it, that demand, that expectation. Uchiha pride demanded nothing less. Demanded satisfaction. She was an Uchiha. She was Sasuke? Sakura. Dimly Sasuke recognized her, her shoulders stiffening, her eyes narrowing slightly, as she looked at her teammate, glaring slightly. She wasn't supposed to be here. Sakura. What are you doing out here? It was an innocent enough question, but Sasuke could hear the undertone, the fear underneath it. So she didn't answer, as she turned her head away, and stared out into the distance, her eyes catching the distant carvings of the Hokage monument. Unconsciously, she lifted her fingers up, rubbing at the dull throb of the curse seal on her neck. It burned in time with the words, the poisonous promises of the Sound Four dripping through her thoughts. Power. Where she wasn't held back, where she could become strong. Stronger than even Itachi. Please don't, Sakura said softly. Please just stay here. Stay with us. Stay with you, you mean, Sasuke said bitterly, as she turned her eyes for a moment, staring at Sakura with bloody crimson Sharingan eyes swirling angrily. Stay here, be the Sasuke-kun you always kept pretending I was. Sasuke-kun. Sakura flinched back, staring back, confusion written across her features, and suddenly it was like her vision of Sasuke shattered, melting away. In its place, Sasuke was decidedly feminine looking. No, she realized, as she stared back into angry, thick-lashed eyes. Female. Why? Supposedly the smartest girl in the class, but she couldn't notice that the boy she was chasing was nothing but an illusion, she said with a sneer before she shook her head, and looked away, staring out into the looming shadows of the forest beyond Konoha's walls. You Sasuke, you're a girl? But Sakura stumbled over the sudden revelation, her mouth hanging slightly, as stared at her teammate. I'm an Uchiha. Don't you remember what the academy told you? We're talented in ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu. She gave a bitter chuckle, as she shook her head. So don't pretend you ever knew me, Sakura. You know nothing about me. But she froze, her eyes glistening, tearing up, as she stared back at him. You were still my friend. Still my teammate. Sasuke flinched back so softly it barely looked like anything beyond a spasming muscle. But it still struck. I don't need friends. I told you from the start my goal is to kill him. Nothing else matters. Only satisfying that. Then we can do it together. Sakura took a desperate step forward. All of us. Team 7. We can do it together. With Kakashi-sensei, and Naruto. You don't need to leave. You mean stay here, and watch while the dead last rises above me? Stay here, and watch, as he walks around with those two little sluts of his? While he goes on his dates with Ino, laughing, smiling at the world when he understands nothing? Sasuke demanded, her eyes burning, Sharingan spinning wildly, as she glared back at Sakura. Don't do this, Sasuke. Not like this, Sakura pleaded desperately, tears filling her eyes. Please, not like this, not to Orochimaru, please don't, not to them. Why not? Why shouldn't I? What the hell is so important about it? Sasuke demanded, sneering back at her. Because they killed them. Sakura's voice broke, as she stared at Sasuke, tears streaming down her face. They killed my parents. They were just civilians. They'd never hurt anyone. They weren't ninjas. But they cut them down like they were trash. I lost my family to them. I can't lose you to them too. I don't care. The words came surprisingly easily to her lips, even as she forced herself to ignore the burning bow rising up her throat. What? The word was brittle, oh so brittle, as it left Sakura's throat. I don't care, Sasuke repeated, half to herself, as she refused to look at Sakura. I don't care that some worthless civilians were killed because they were too weak to defend themselves. Sakura stared at her, horror written on her face before she could feel the almost audible snap cracking inside of her, and her scream rose like a howl in the air. Traitor! Naruto shifted slightly, as he walked next to Ino, tugging at the high collar of his new vest, as he unconsciously brought his fingers down to check the newly filled compartments of his vest. Beneath it he wore a long-sleeved gray jacket, and sturdy charcoal pants with pouches in the same location as his old outfit. Sighing, he shook his head, and grunted softly. I feel so bland, he complained lightly. Well, you don't always want to draw attention to you, you know, Naruto-sama, Kin pointed out from behind them where she followed next to Temari. Besides, you draw enough attention with your personality, Ino said with a nod of her head. You mean when he's yelling at the top of his lungs? Temari offered. That too, Ino agreed with a smirk, as she firmly kept her arm wrapped about Naruto's. Aren't you supposed to be on my side? Naruto asked with a grunting whine, as he glanced at Temari, and Kin over his shoulder. Only if you order me to be, Temari responded back with a smirk. Damn it, he said with a grunt. And you'd probably half-ass that, wouldn't you, Sunshine? Probably, she agreed with a nod. Traitor! The furious scream roared through the air, as they passed by the gate. Wait, isn't that Sakura? Ino said, as she disengaged herself from Naruto's arm, and started to run towards the location of the scream. It sounded like it was. Naruto agreed, easily keeping pace with her. Well, hopefully this means I get to hurt someone, Kin muttered, as she and Temari moved after them. We might just, Temari agreed, as they followed on Naruto and Ino's heels. Sakura! Ino shouted out, as she saw a figure looming over a familiar pink head of hair, their fist cocked back, and ready to strike. At the sound of Ino's voice, the figure started for a moment, seeing the group running towards them. Immediately the figure let go of Sakura. With an impressive display of speed, the figure made towards the forest. With one motion, Naruto summoned up a small group of clones, and sent them after the figure before he and Ino slid to a stop at Sakura. Sakura was coughing violently, as she struggled to catch her breath while her hands clutched at her stomach. Immediately Ino kneeled down, rubbing her back trying to help her breath. Sakura. What happened? As Sasuke, Sakura coughed out, as she rubbed at her stomach softly. Traitor. Going to sound. Tried to stop her. There was a pause, as she looked over, and found Naruto's eyes, locking onto them with a look of pure, absolute hatred. Go. Stop stopping her. Or kill her. Naruto summoned forth another group of clones, his mind glossing over the way Sakura referred to Sasuke as a girl, as he sent a group of them towards the tower, and left two there. I'm going with you, Ino said angrily, her eyes burning, before she looked at Sakura for confirmation. You'll be okay, right? Sakura coughed again, and then gave her a thumbs up in acknowledgement. Ino let one of Naruto's clones take Sakura from her before she glanced towards Kin and Temari. They shared a nodded look, as they looked at her. You two are coming, I take it? For a chance to mess up the pretty boy? Hell yeah, Kin agreed with a nod. Might, as well, Temari agreed. Then let's go, Naruto stated with a growl. The bastard is gonna pay for what he did to Sakura. And without a word they ran into the forest, following the trail left by the clones Naruto had released earlier. No, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. Sasuke ran, pushing her tired, aching body, jumping from tree to tree, putting as much distance between her and Konoha as she could, as quickly as she could. She wasn't supposed to be running like this. Sakura wasn't supposed to scream like that. She wasn't supposed to be able to stop her from knocking her out quickly and quietly. Naruto wasn't supposed to know, not like this. This wasn't right. This wasn't supposed to be happening. There was no chance that Naruto wasn't following her now. All she could do was hope that he'd chase her blindly, leaving Ino behind to care for Sakura, buying her a few extra minutes to get farther away. And that Naruto hadn't sent clones to alert, and too many things, too many possibilities, too many ways things could go wrong. She had to get away, as quickly as she could. Otherwise no, she had to get away. You should tell her, Naruto-sama, Kin spoke up softly, as she slid into position next to Naruto, as they moved through the trees following the trail they'd been left. This isn't the best time, Naruto shot back with a growl, as he kept his focus straight ahead, catching another fresh slash in a tree, and following its direction. She needs to know what to expect if you go all out, Kin answered back before a flash of worry crossed her features. Because Orochimaru probably has a retrieval waiting for him, and us. She needs to be able to focus, Naruto countered back. She needs to not freak out when in the middle of combat because you started using the red stuff, she responded back. You think she'll be able to focus if she doesn't know to expect that? He growled again, his jaw clenching, as he dug his fingers into his palms. And you're already almost there, Temari added, as she came up on them. I can feel it. Your anger, your rage. The power waiting for you. What are you three talking about? We need to catch that bastard. Ino started with a glare. We can't let him get away. We're talking about what King started to say, only to be cut off by a growl and a glare from Naruto. You're going to have to trust her about it eventually, Temari stated quietly. Damn it! Naruto growled angrily. I was having a good day, damn it! Why can't I just have a good day? Naruto, what the hell? Ino could feel the air thickening with something in the air, something that scared her. Fine, Naruto growled, as the lines on his face seemed to thicken, roughening. The fourth didn't kill them. He sealed him into me, making me a... What? She faltered for a moment, almost falling from the branch before he caught her. She could see the claws tipping his fingers, though he took care to not dig them into her skin. When she looked up, she could see his eyes looking back at her. Not the deep, pure blue she was familiar with, but a deep, bloody red with a slitted pupil. When she was again on sure footing, he released her, and took a step back. It's a village secret. Nobody our age is supposed to know. It's why most of the older generations don't like me. Naruto? Ino's mind was a whirling, chaotic mess, as she stared back at him. It's why your dad said you shouldn't use your clan techniques on me, ever, he continued, looking away, and shifting slightly. You could end up coming in contact with him. For a moment she stared at him, not sure what to say, not sure what to do. If you can't handle it, turn, and get back to Konoha, and make sure Sakura-chan's okay, he said simply before turning back in the direction they'd been headed. I can stop Sasuke without you. Oh, hell no! That snapped her out of what loop his words threw her into. You're not getting rid of me that easy. If you're going on, so am I. Ino, he started to say, as he turned his head back towards her, only to feel her grabbing hold of his vest, and pulling him to face her. That's Ino-chan to you, Naruto Uzumaki, she said with a growl, as she pulled him over, and gave him a rough kiss before glaring back up into his eyes. And you are not getting rid of me that easily. Wouldn't that count as accosting a superior? Temari noted in a throaty, amused tone, as her own eyes bled crimson like her master's. Naruto, why are their eyes like yours? Ino asked, blushing lightly, as she released her grip on his vest, and saw the way Temari and Kin both developed features like he did. The seal that got put on them when they were bound to me, he said, blushing brightly, as he lightly flicked his tongue over his lips, tasting them nervously. We get access to the red stuff when he accesses it, Kin said with a leering smirk, as her eyes burned hungrily back at her. And a lot more chakra than we had before. Are we going to stand around all day, or are we going to hunt down a traitor? Temari asked again, her closed fan rolling about her wrist and hand. Because the more time we waste here, the further the bastard is getting, Ino agreed. Her eyes narrowed into slits before she gave Naruto a look. We're going to talk about this later, Naruto-kun. Right, he agreed, tensing to jump again, only to wince when she jabbed him in the side with a finger. What? Yes, what? She prompted with a light glare. Yes, Ino-chan? He offered carefully. Much better, she agreed with a nod, as she launched herself off of the tree branch. Damn it, I knew there'd be no getting rid of her. Kin grumbled, as she launched herself after Ino, Temari following only half an instant later. Naruto joined them after only a moment's confusion, as he struggled to figure out exactly what had just happened, before quickly shoving it out of the way. That could wait. Right now, Sasuke had turned traitor and hurt Sakura. That was all that he needed to worry about right now. Once he dealt with the bastard, then could deal with Ino. And maybe by then things with her would actually make sense. For some reason though, he found himself doubting it. Sasuke burst into the clearing, drenched in sweat, and panting tiredly from the desperate sprint she'd put in attempting to escape, combined with the exhaustion from her earlier training session. Well, look who decided to show up, a girl with red hair drawn out with a smirk, as she looked towards her companions. And we didn't even have to go meet him like you were planning, Sakan? So it seems, Tayuya. Welcome, Sasuke-sama, the white-haired boy greeted with a smirk. We do apologize about the unpleasantness earlier. We simply wanted to take measure of. We need to go, now, Sasuke stated, as she quickly glanced over her shoulder, straining her ears to pick up sounds of pursuit. What do you mean, we need to go? A thick boy asked, his small, beady eyes narrowed into slits. You followed or something? Be quiet, Jirubu, the last member, a six-armed boy stated, as he spat out a golden substance into the form of a bow. Looks like our great, future leader didn't quite live up to Orochimaru-sama's expectations, huh? Who is following you, Sasuke-sama? Sakan asked simply, as he tilted his head to the side, eyes narrowing slowly. Naruto, and his group. He'll probably be here any second. We need to go, Sasuke hissed out, as she unconsciously pushed her hand up against the pulsing, hungry seal throbbing at the base of her neck. Your teammate? Tayuya snorted softly. Wasn't he supposed to be the dead last or something? Tayuya, you noticed how that bastard Kabuto was short an arm when he and Orochimaru-sama came back? The six-armed boy asked, as he strung up his bow, and spat out a golden-looking arrow. What the fuck about it, Kidomaru? She demanded with a grunt, as she nonetheless brought out her flute, and eyed the woods warily. That was done by a kid named Naruto, Kidomaru responded, as he notched the arrow, and looked around. One from Konoha. In those moments the four-sound Nin had been speaking, Sasuke took a moment to calm herself, centering herself with several deep breaths. It was just Naruto, and Ino, and probably those damned spoils of his. There wouldn't be too much of a problem. Naruto had apparently beaten them pretty damned easily, so the 4 Orochimaru had sent should be able to defeat them without much issue. That left Naruto, who had apparently grown at an insane pace. Naruto, who had been training under A, potentially even 2, Naruto, who she hadn't really seen in action in almost 2 months. He'd still only be 1, and he just got in a lucky shot at Kabuto, Sakura stated simply, as he narrowed his eyes. There are 5 of us, and if we have to, we can invoke the power of our seals. He won't be alone, Sasuke stated softly, calmed down, and glanced back over her shoulder, just in time to see a trio of familiar blonde figures shoot out of the forest, straight towards her. As she quickly jumped back away from them, Chikamaru launched his arrow, shooting out faster than any kunai she would have thrown, straight at the chest of the lead figure. A foot in front of him, it split in half, and parted harmlessly around him. All 3 of them lanced in a feral crouch, glaring up at Sasuke in a loose triangle formation. Well, fuck, Chikamaru grunted, as he formed a group of sickles from his golden webbing. Didn't expect him to have a level that high. Sasuke, the lead figure, started with an angry glare. You're coming with us. Huh, cocky little bastards aren't they? Taiuya grunted out, as she narrowed her eyes warily. Guess Konoha trash likes to run their mouths. Listen, you dumb shits, he's leaving of his own will. Are you really ready to do that? The lead Naruto flicked his eyes towards Taiuya, and suddenly the clone at his left shot straight at her. A flick of his eyes again, and the clone at his right was moving straight towards Jiraiya. Then, his eyes landed back on Sasuke. You hurt Sakura, he said softly. You're going to pay. And with that, he launched forward with a roar. Immediately, Chikamaru launched a wave of sickles at the lead Naruto clone, only to curse and twist, as the one moving towards Jiraiya threw a pair of kunai at him. He twisted out of the way, only to have to send out a spitting blast of webbing to stop the 2 kunai he leaned into the path of from the clone moving towards Taiuya. He oriented himself again, just in time for Jiraiya and Taiuya to react to their opponents. Jiraiya slammed his palm into the ground, blasting out a wave of dirt, and rocked straight towards the rushing clone. Taiuya cut her thumb on her tooth, and slammed her palm down into the ground herself. Only, in a small explosion of smoke, 3 hulking figures loomed around her. Jiraiya stumbled back when he felt the hard impact of the clone's heel cracking down on his raised arms when the wave of dirt and rock had parted around him. Following that, the Naruto clone had flipped forward, smashing down on Jiraiya's arm with a powerful kick. Then the sound Nin could feel the telltale tug of chakra being applied to his skin by the boy's foot, before he felt the knee driving up under his arms and smashing his nose. Growling angrily, he grabbed hold of the clone's ankle, and then snarled, as he moved to smash the clone down into the earth in front of him. In response, the clone desperately twisted its body forward, as much as it could before swiping his fingers down. 4 lines of crimson blossomed across Jiraiya's face, and down his chest, but he never relaxed his grip, as he slammed the clone down into the ground. Through blood-stung eyes, Jiraiya could swear he saw the clone smirking back at him before it exploded into smoke. Jiraiya's response was a bellow of pain and rage. Taiuya had moved back, letting the hulking forms of her doki fill the gap between herself and the clone, as she brought her flute up to her lips. Before the first note even rose, one of her doki hunched forward, a wet, wheezing gurgle escaping it, before crumpling back and dispersing in a puff of chakra smoke. Before it, the clone was holding up a swirling and glaring angrily at her. Then the notes started to flow, and he had to jump and twist out of the way of the 2 remaining doki. Furiously glaring, she watched as cuts ripped across her summon's chests and arms. The clone swiped at them, and the wounds rose up, cut into them from almost a foot away. Angrily she let a quick series of notes, the sounds pulsing into the air, and the doki moved in unison, attempting to strike him, though it quickly became evident that she wasn't quite used to directing only 2 of them. The melody seemed disjointed, haphazard, but still it kept the clone moving. And move he did, twisting just out of the way of some of the blows, jumping, ducking, weaving while he would jump in, make a quick slash then jump back out. Unfortunately the clone failed to pay enough attention to its surroundings, and launched itself back from a particularly powerful blow, straight into Taiuya's waiting fist. As it held an expression of disbelief before it exploded, Chikamaru sent a blast of webbing straight at the clone lunging towards him, only to watch as it parted around him just as his arrow had. In front of him, Sakura placed himself between Naruto and Sasuke, smirking, as he slowly licked his lips in anticipation. Sasuke frowned, tensing warily, as she let her eyes dart around. Only 2 clones weren't Naruto's style, and she hadn't seen either of the spoils. As Sakura shifted about, he grinned at the figure. Shall we see what kind of melody we can play with you, Playing with this, the clone snarled, as it swirled into existence in his open palm, and he slammed it towards Sakan's gut. Only suddenly a pair of hands sprouted out of Sakan's stomach, and grabbed hold of the clone's wrist before the attack could land. Growling angrily, he dispersed, and swung his other hand forward like a claw, only to feel Sakan grabbing his wrist with a smirk. "Did you really think trash like you could come here, and get away with running your mouth like that?" His free hand cocked back, smirking at the blonde. "Obviously, you need a lesson in knowing when you..." His words trailed off into a sudden scream, as the clone's fingers above Sakan's stomach had opened, then snapped shut, and blood suddenly flowed out of a torn stomach. Reflexively, Sakan released the clone, pushing him away, as he brought his hands down on his stomach, pressing over them with a hiss of anger. I'm going to tear you apart." The clone could only watch in disbelief, as the wound knitted itself back together beneath Sakan's hand, then twisted out of the way of a thrown scythe from Kidomaru. As the six-armed Nin jumped forward, grinning eagerly, he blasted out webbing all around the clone. The threads never quite touched him, never got close enough to be cut by his defense, but bit by bit they hemmed him in until he vanished behind an oversized cocoon. Now, let's see how shall I play, Kidomaru asked, as he stalked around the cocoon. "This one is mine," Sakan declared with a growl, as he rubbed his stomach. "You already had your turn, it's mine again," Kidomaru countered, as he glared back at Sakan. Finally, realization hit Sasuke, her eyes widening in shock. "No, that's not Naruto, that's a clone." Before they could respond, 5 slashes tore through the cocoon, parting it, before the Naruto clone stepped out with a glare. "It's going to take a lot more than a bunch of spit to stop me." The clone began to pull itself out of the cocoon, as Kidomaru smirked, and moved in, tossing up a couple of his scythes into the air. Overhead they cut through a weaker series of threads, and suddenly a rain of golden spikes fell down, straight towards the Naruto clone. Moving swiftly, the clone managed to dodge the spears, and the sudden throw of a pair of sickles headed for him. Before he was knocked down by one of the sickles Kidomaru had tossed up, the hook digging into his shoulder with a wet puncturing sound. "You mean like that?" Kidomaru pointed out with a smirk, only to see the bleeding figure smirking back at him. "Yeah, the bastard was right after all, I'm just a clone." There was a vicious smirk on the clone's lips. "Well, bring the real one," Kidomaru started to say, smirking softly, as he started to turn in the direction the clones had first appeared. It was then that the air in the clearing suddenly grew thick, heavy, as it weighed down upon the 5 young Nin. "What the hell is that?" Tayuya demanded, as she shifted back, fighting the cold sweat threatening to break out on her skin. "He's here," the clone whispered out, loud enough for them all to hear, before it dispersed in a puff of smoke. Now where Kidomaru looked around, his eyes narrowed, as he reached up towards his forehead protector. It was then a crimson-coated form led by a swirling orb fell upon him, smashing into him like a falling star, as it smashed into his shoulder, and suddenly a rolling cloud of dust filled the air with Kidomaru's scream. Instinctively the other 4 Nin leapt back away from the rising cloud, as a palpable miasma of bloodthirsty rage consumed the air. Like a curtain falling, the dust suddenly dropped, dragged back to the earth to reveal the crouching form of Naruto, surrounded in boiling crimson chakra, standing atop of the destroyed body of Kidomaru. Sasuke stared at him in shock, as the dark, feral glare burned into eyes, her Sharingan reflexively activating, capturing the look of pure, undisguised loathing, hate, and betrayal etched upon those features, all screaming, as they focused on her. In front of the bleeding Jirobu, Temari dropped down, eyeing the thick teen with a look of distaste, as she lightly spun her fans about her wrists. "Damn, I got stuck with the pig." As Jirobu fought between worry and rage at the scene unfolding in front of him, Kin dropped in front of Tayuya, looking at her for a moment with dark, narrowed eyes, before straightening up, as she tilted her head to the side. "Well, this should be fun. I never did get to properly thank you for all the encouragement you used to give me, Tayuya-senpai." "You?" Tayuya's eyes widened in recognition before narrowing into slits, as she activated the first stage of her cursed seal. "You traitorous little bitch. What, just because I picked a better master?" Kin smirked back at Tayuya, as she held up her fingers for a moment, and suddenly, where there was 1, there were 10. "That's the sound way, isn't it? Selling ourselves, our loyalty, our souls, and freedom to the ones who grant us power. I simply got a better deal than you did." Ino was the last to appear, landing on the ground next to Naruto, standing tall and proud, as she glared at Sasuke. "Traitor, you're not getting away, Sasuke," Naruto's voice burned, as he glared back at the Uchiha. "You know, Sasuke-sama, you have such interesting friends, such spirited pieces of trash," Sakan noted before suddenly his cursed seal spread across his skin. "Let's see how much you squirm." With that, Sakan suddenly lunged forward, faster than he had moved before, heading straight for Naruto. With a sudden pulse, Naruto launched himself forward, as well, his path straight towards the approaching Sakon, fist already cocked. Before he knew it, Sakon suddenly felt the smash of Naruto's fist cracking into his face, sending him flying back, with Naruto launching after him with a snarl. Left alone, Sasuke narrowed her eyes, and slowly took a ready stance. You can't beat me, Yamanaka. Most days, you're probably right, Ino agreed, as a kunai twirled into each of her hands in a back-handed grip. But you're favoring your right side while keeping your weight off your left. Your hair is matted, thick, your clothes are damp, and your stink is filling the air. And on top of that, I want to make you hurt. So this time? This time, Uchiha, you're dead wrong. A chill ran down her spine, and Sasuke shifted defensively. Beating me when I'm weak means nothing. I'm a ninja, Uchiha-san, she responded with a bloodthirsty grin taken straight from Enko's repertoire. How you get your win doesn't matter, only that you won. I'm going to destroy you. Jirubu growled angrily from beneath bloody eyes, as he thrust forward straight at Temari. Temari instead twisted to the side, as his arm came within range. She gestures, a graceful, almost dancing motion, as her fan snapped open, revealing the razor-sharp blades within. In a flash they cut against the back of Jirubu's elbow before snapping shut, and rolling into her waiting hand. As Jirubu fought down a scream of pain, and cradled his arm, Temari snapped the fan open, and hid her face beneath her eyes behind the bloody fan. My, did that hurt? It certainly looked like it. Want me to kiss it, and make it better? Bitch! He snarled angrily before reaching down, attempting to rip up something from the earth, only to grunt, and hiss, as his arm buckled ineffectually beneath the pressure. Damn it! My language! And in front of a lady, Temari smirked, as the fan snapped shut, and she lightly tapped her lower lip in though. I suppose I could forgive you if you got down on your knees, and begged forgiveness. I only need one arm to wipe that smirk from your face. Jirubu snarled, and lunged forward with a powerful blow from his unwounded arm. Clinically, Temari could tell he was powerful. He had a lot of strength in his frame, and he channeled it properly into a single, focused strike. It was the kind of blow that only the strongest of individuals wouldn't be staggered or even disabled from, so she simply made certain he didn't hit her. Which, she had to admit, wasn't as easy as she thought it would be, especially when he began to invoke his curse seal. As the distorted patterns crept over bloodied and torn features, she found it more difficult to stay a step ahead of the savage fighter. Each time her fan struck out, their cuts grew steadily shallower as time passed. Well, this is a bother, Temari noted with a slight sigh. Tayuya had wasted little time invoking the full strength of the first level of her seal only to growl, as suddenly herself and her doki were buried to their ankles in the earth where the kin clones were smirking at her, holding their hands down on the earth. You think I'm worried about trash like you with a couple of new little tricks? Tayuya snarled, as she glared back at Kin. While you were jerking around, as bait with those two fuckheads, Dosu and Zaku, I made my way into the elite. Kin nodded her head making a flapping motion with her hand, as she tilted her head to the side, and flicked at Tayuya, who easily deflected it with her flute. Big, bad Tayuya, north gate of the Sound 4. Watch out or she'll eat you alive. Damn straight. Tayuya agreed with a snarl. Her skin darkened, and her hat exploded out, as a crown of horns grew wreathing her head, as she reached the second state of her cursed seal, and suddenly ripped herself free from the earth. I survived for this strength. I died for this strength. I sure as hell won't lose to a bitch like you. And with a sudden note the two doki surged forward, breaking out of the earth trap, and opening up their mouths, as a sickly, hungering erupting of spiritual energy took shape, and then hungrily lunged towards the kin clones. In response, each clone threw a series of at the doki with a startling force. For a moment the creatures paused, frozen, as they pierced into the cloth covering their faces before. With a gurgling moan, they fell to their knees, and then dispersed. You were always so proud that you got that seal, Kin noted, as she glared back at Tayuya. Her eyes narrowed into slits. How you were chosen to be an experiment, and lived to tell the tale. It shows I'm strong, you little Tayuya snarled, as she shifted into a ready stance. You think that's strength? Kin grinned, her eyes burning hungrily. You think you're special because you've got a seal on you from A? Because your master gives you strength? You think that's funny? Tayuya demanded, her eyes narrowed into slits. She giggled then, amusement flashing through her eyes. Well, Tayuya-chan, yes I do. Because I've got one too. Only the one who made mine is better with seals than the one who made yours, and the power my master gives me? Suddenly Tayuya was hit by another blast of that rolling, thickening of the air, as bubbling crimson chakra leaked out of Kin's body, her eyes turning a deep, hungry blood red, and her toothy grin turned fanged. Shifting slightly, she brought up her clawed fingers, flexing them for Tayuya to see, as she grinned eagerly at her, and spoke. It's just plain better than the one your master gave you. She rolled her neck at that, sending an audible ripple of pops into the air, as she crouched forward, body tensed. But don't worry, Tayuya-chan. I don't expect you to just believe it because I said it. I'm going to have fun beating this into your head like a drum. And like a shot, she slammed forward straight towards Tayuya. Naruto frowned, as he watched his opponent. The gray-haired boy was smirking confidently at him. It was rather irritating considering he really could just. An image flashed through his mind, Sakan's face split down the center, shocked before he fell into two bloody halves. It would be easy, the enemy Nin was already almost within range. A lunge, and it would be done. Simple, easy. And his opponent would be dead. A part of him dimly pointed out that he'd already probably killed the other Nin just moments ago, but it was quietly dismissed as irrelevant. Then another part of him pointed out simply that he wasn't the type to take the easy way. Another, dimmer, part of him remembered the advice that relying on the same trick over and over again instead of figuring out new ones was a surefire way to end up dead and buried. So, with a growl, he rushed forward, his eyes flashing darkly, as Sakan widened in surprise at the speed of his approach. In response, Sakan kicked out at Naruto, his legs suddenly becoming three, as he kicked out at Naruto's side. The kicks landed hard against Naruto's sides only to have the boy growled in response, as he grabbed the leg, and dug his clawed fingers into the calf, piercing the flesh roughly. Immediately the extra legs vanished, as fists leaped out from Sakan's stomach, and pounded into Naruto's gut. Forced to release the leg, Naruto formed a hand, and swiped at Sakan's hip. The gray-haired boy twisted, and dodged for the most part but still ground the flesh of the hip raw. In response, Sakan produced a kunai in his free hand, as he used his free hand to twirl into a slash across Naruto's arm. Gritting his teeth in response, Naruto brought his other hand down, slashing the air with wind blades, and forcing Sakan to limp back, and put some distance between the two of them. For a moment the gray-haired figure watched Naruto with narrowed eyes before smirking back at him. Not bad, you're almost the worst kind of opponent for me to face. A close-quarters specialist like myself, Sakan smirked then, as he shifted slightly, and the wounds on his leg and hip knitted back together. But I can put myself back together, can you? In response, Naruto smirked slightly, and held up his arm, then clenched his fist, as the crimson chakra bubbled up for a moment, and the wound quickly sealed back up with a quiet hiss of air. Brother, another voice spoke up, as another head formed atop Sakan's body. Why are you drawing this out? Why haven't you just killed him already? He's such an interesting opponent, Yukon. It's been so long since someone was able to hurt us like that. Since Shikamaru, Sakan stated simply, as he slowly ran his tongue over his lips. I was simply savoring the experience. We don't have time to play your games. We're expected back, Yukon snapped back with a glare. Let's just kill him quickly, and be done with it. Fine, Sakan agreed sourly before smirking back at Naruto. It would seem we're going to just show you the full power of Orochimaru's seal. And with that the twisting pattern rippling across his flesh spread further, consuming the entirety of his form, as his scara turned black, and his features turned demonic. A horn rose out of the opposite sides of each of their heads, their teeth grew jagged, and their jaws pointed. With matching smirks turned upon him, Naruto narrowed his eyes, as he watched the way their bodies seemed to bulge out to the side, separating into two distinct forms. Now to end this, Yukon stated eagerly, as he tensed in anticipation. 2 words, Naruto growled back with narrowed eyes, as he brought his hands together. Kagabunshin. Sasuke wasted little time, launching straight towards Ino, as fast as she could manage. On most days it would have been fast enough to overcome her opponent's reflexes. Today, Ino twisted beneath an arching snap kick that, at full speed and strength, would have sent her flying. When Sasuke arched, and spun down into a sweep, Ino twirled, blades slashing out, taking a line of crimson from Sasuke's leg. Then she landed, her whole body still twisting, adding the force of momentum to her throws, as she released both her kunai, sending them flying straight towards Sasuke's favored side. As the Uchiha stretched away, keeping her grimace suppressed, Ino attempted to snap a kick at her other side, towards her hip. Her eyes narrowed, and then suddenly flashed crimson, as her Sharingan activated, mostly following Ino's motions, as slammed her elbow down, and struck Ino's leg. The kick struck the elbow, and both girls winced at the impact, Ino swiftly slipping back, as another pair of kunai slipped into her hands while Sasuke shook her arm for only a moment then glared back at Ino. I told you before, you can't beat me, Sasuke stated simply, her spinning eyes narrowed into slits. Maybe any other day, Ino said simply, as she tightened her grip on her weapons, and narrowed her eyes. But today you're going to lose. Foolish girl, Sasuke growled, sweeping up Ino's fallen kunai, and throwing one then the other at Ino with a snarl. In response, Ino threw one of her kunai, knocking the first kunai to the side, then ricocheting into the second. From that second ricochet, Sasuke was already moving, and the launched kunai was caught by the hilt, and she was running forward. In response, one more kunai slipped into Ino's free hand, and she moved quickly, bringing her blades up to deflect Sasuke's slash. For a few precious moments, it seemed, as though Sasuke's furious, precise slashes would wear through Ino's defenses, to crash through them before she cut the blonde down with her own kunai. Only, amidst that storm, Ino remained calm, using tight, efficient motions, deflecting the slashes instead of blocking. Small little cuts swelled here and there when she couldn't fully make a clean deflection in time to deflect the follow-up strike. But despite the onslaught, Ino stared back into Sasuke's eyes with a cold, calm certainty that spoke volumes to the Sharingan gaze. Today, Sasuke wouldn't be the victor. Today, Sasuke would be the one to lose. Sasuke's rhythm faltered. As that realization hit her, the sheer incredulity of Ino's confidence stalling her already slowing strikes. It was a mistake. Just as she promised, Ino struck, taking advantage of that falter, and slashing out towards the top of Sasuke's kneecap. Realization quickly relayed itself back down through Sasuke's limbs, and her free hand shot down, knocking the attack down only an inch. An inch was enough to save the tendons attached to her kneecap, as she twisted slightly enough to the side to prevent the blade from cutting into her flesh. It was not, however, enough to block the fist that slammed into the joint, and forced her leg to buckle in a flash of pain. Ino bounced from the strike while Sasuke struggled to keep her grip on her confiscated kunai while Ino's strike slashed out. A thrust of the ring turned into an underhanded slash when deflected, a shift that forced Sasuke to block Ino's strike from her other hand with her unarmed fist. Bones cracked beneath the blunt strike of the kunai ring smashing into the back of her hand. Snarling, Sasuke slashed out, trying to force Ino back, and rise out of her force kneel at the same time. Ino refused her, taking a nasty cut along her arm, as she locked up Sasuke's kunai, and slammed her own knee into the side of Sasuke's raised one. Forced to kneel completely by the motion, Sasuke tried to dig the blade deeper into Ino's skin while the blonde cut into her own arm, and twisted around to her back. Then Sasuke couldn't help but scream, as she felt the slash of Ino's kunai cutting the tendons at the back of her ankles. The scream was short-lived, as her slash rose up with a twist of her body, and Ino slammed the ring of her kunai into the side of Sasuke's head. Spasming fingers lost their grip on her kunai, and Sasuke's eyes flickered between black and crimson, though she refused to surrender so easily to unconsciousness. "Just stay down," Ino snarled, as she smashed her fist into Sasuke's cheek, again, then again, as the crippled girl struggled to escape the blows, as her broken hand rose up, trying in vain to shield her vulnerable head from the sharp, snapping blows. Releasing the hold she'd kept on Sasuke's other arm, she slammed her knee hard into Sasuke's ribs. Then when the girl reflexively flinched her hands towards her side, she grabbed hold the back of Sasuke's head, and smashed her face into her knee. Sasuke's head snapped back, as the force of the blow finally drove her consciousness from her body, and she went limp against Ino's grip. Panting softly, Ino glared at the downed girl, her eyes slit, as she pushed her back, and off of her, listening to the unconscious moans of pain falling out of her lips. Only taking a moment to catch her breath, she quickly secured her weapons, making sure that they were out of the Uchiha's potential reach. Grunting softly, she was suddenly very glad Anko had impressed an always-prepared mentality upon her. Emergency medical aid was rendered, both on herself and, reluctantly, upon the Uchiha. She then quickly secured her captive with an intricate series of knots. When she finished, she let out a sigh of relief, and turned her attention towards where Naruto and the girls were engaged in their own respective battles. "Well damn," Ino took a moment, staring down at the captive at her feet, and slowly shaking her head, as realization hit her. "I actually did it. What you did is what we want to know," a new voice cut in with a tired chill in it. "Because from where we're looking it doesn't look good." Ino looked up with a start, and then released a sigh of relief, as she recognized the replacement proctor for the third exam standing there with another man with a scar across his face. Then, the rest of her mind quickly caught up with the situation she was in, and she snapped to attention. Genin Ino Yamanaka, under command of Chunin Naruto Uzumaki, completed the objective of halting the defection of Sasuke Uchiha to Hidden Sound and Orochimaru. Genma paused for a moment, his twisting in his mouth, as he caught the three fights still ongoing, all but one figure familiar to him, as he could feel the sense of heavy bloodlust and demonic chakra in the air before grimly looking back at Ino. "And your commander?" Ino's eyes narrowed at the unspoken question, and she glared back at the man, dealing with the extraction team sent to aid the Uchiha's defection. "Has Gemma started to ask?" Pondering how to phrase the question. "He is under control," Ino snapped back, before wincing slightly. Another wave of chakra flooded the air, just really pissed off. Nodding slightly, Genma turned towards his companion. Radio, go get the others. I'll make sure this doesn't get out of control. Gotcha, Radio agreed with a nod before looking at Ino. If what you say is true, good job, kid. And with that, Radio vanished in a swirl of leaves. Thanks for watching my video, and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic. Link is in the description. See you next time, till then sayonara.